Everybody,
It's here.
Good morning.
have a good night.
Sure.
Great. Okay, we need to call the Dental Board of California meeting to order. Secretary Afriat will take the roll call and establish a quorum, and then we will immediately go into closed session. Okay, so Secretary Afriat.
Good morning, Stephen Morrow.
Here.
Judith Forsythe.
Here.
Steve Afriat is here. Fran Burton. Stephen Chan. Here. You made the list.
Finally.
Yvette Chappelle Ingram.
Here.
Katie Dawson.
Here.
Kathleen King. Ross Lai. Here. Huang Lei. Thought I saw her. Meredith McKenzie.
Here.
Thomas Stewart.
Here.
Bruce Witcher.
Here.
Deborah Wu.
Here.
Mr. President, we have 11 members and a quorum.
Thank you very much.
Oh.
Okay, we will now be going into closed session.
And let the record reflect that Dr. Lei is also here. We have 12 members.
Thank you.
And Fran Burton.
And Fran Burton, we have 13.
Oh, yeah, we only need 8, we're fine. 13's a lucky number.
Lucky number, okay. Welcome to Friday morning. Just a few quick announcements before we get started with our agenda for this morning. As usual, when we start the meeting, we want to ask you to all put your cell phones on silent mode. Make sure that they are not on the table, because sometimes if they vibrate with our microphones, it gives us a buzzing sound. And we don't want to buzz if we don't need to, okay? You may notice also that board members will be accessing laptops or electronic devices during the meeting. They are using their laptops or electronic devices solely to access board meeting materials that are in electronic format. This meeting is being webcast and will be archived after the meeting and available on the board's website for viewing at a later date. This is an official meeting of the Dental Board of California. We have a designated time on the agenda for public comment and ask for public comment at each agenda item. Each person will be limited to 3 minutes per agenda item. The board welcomes public comment on any item on the agenda, and it is the board's intent to ask for public comment prior to the board taking action on any agenda item. If for some reason I forget to ask for public comment on an agenda item, please raise your hand, let me know, and I will recognize you. I want to remind all speakers to please stay on topic in your comments and keep your comments to a 3-minute or less. Thank you for your cooperation. We had a very busy day yesterday. We did some rearrangements of our agenda schedule. So we're going to start off this morning's meeting with, first of all, a report. This is agenda item 8A, and this will be a report from the closed session of the Licensure, Certification, and Permits Committee, which met just a few minutes ago. So this, again, is under Thursday's agenda, item number 8A. The Licensure, Certification, and Permits Committee met in closed session to consider 1 request for renewal of a conscious sedation permit and 4 requests for issuance of new licenses to replace canceled licenses. The details of these requests were included in the board members' closed session binders. First request, Dennis T.G., request for issuance of a conscious sedation, renewal of a conscious sedation permit. The board committee met and discussed this, and it was the board's decision and the committee's decision and recommendation that the request for renewal of the conscious sedation permit be denied.
Spencer, do you want to do them all?
You can do them all.
Can I do them all together? No,
The thing
because
is,
they're
these
different.
are all different. So
They're all different.
Yeah, they're all different.
Yes. So I think we need,
The G-O and L-V, those are the ones that
okay,
let's
those
do
are,
those together.
Well, we're running out of roll call pages, so.
Okay, so that's what, okay, yeah, do these,
Yeah, let's do it
do
all at
G-O
once.
and L-V together.
okay, we're going to do, whoops, which ones together? Sorry.
G-O,
Okay. But I just did this one, TG, okay? So we're going to take this one as an individual, okay? So recommendation is to deny request for renewal of the conscious sedation permit. What that means is that this individual, in order to obtain a new conscious sedation permit, they must go through the application process completely from beginning to end. Okay? So that's a recommendation from the committee to the board. You need to discuss that as you need, and somebody make a motion to
So
either
moved.
approve our recommendation or not.
there's no
Second.
second yet, is there?
No.
No second, don't second
we
yet,
don't have to.
don't second yet.
No.
You second it? Okay.
No, I didn't.
We're trying to bundle these together, okay?
Since
Oh.
we're running out down there, okay, just do, R-W is granted, G-O is granted.
RWGO,
Yeah, just indicate what you did for the four of these, and then there can be one motion to accept that.
okay, which are the four? GO,
Yeah.
and what else?
R-W is granted.
All right.
Just like this. G-O.
Okay,
D granted.
that's fine. All right. As long as Spencer's not confused, we're okay. So we're going to bundle these together, all right? So our recommendation is that for TG, that the request for denial, request for approval be denied. The next item is for dentist RW. This is to replace a canceled license, no, I'm sorry, to issue a new license from a canceled license due to failure to pay the licensing fees in a timely manner. Following reviewing of the specifics of this case, the LCP's recommendation to the board is to approve the issuance of a new license to replace the canceled license with the condition that the applicant successfully passes the California Dentistry Law and Ethics examination. Okay. Number 3 is dental assistant GO, request for a new license to replace a canceled license. And after reviewing the information obtained, and is also obtainable for you in your packets, the Licensing and Certification and Permits Committee recommends to the board to approve the issuance of a new RDA license to replace the canceled license with the condition that the applicant successfully passes the RDA written law and ethics examination. Okay. The next is a registered dental assistant PL. After reviewing the specifics in this case, the committee recommends that the board approve the issuance of a new license to replace the canceled license with the condition that the applicant successfully passes the RDA written and the RDA law and ethics examinations both. And number 5, registered dental assistant LV. Following review of the information regarding this application, the LCP committee recommends to the board to approve the issuance of a new RDA license to replace the canceled license with the condition that the applicant successfully passes the RDA written ethics examination. Okay.
Move that the committee report be accepted and the actions of the committee be approved.
Second, Burton.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Any comments or questions from members of the public in attendance regarding this agenda item? Okay. Mr. Secretary, please do the roll call vote.
Stephen Morrow,
Yes.
Judith Forsyth,
Yes.
Steve Afrigat, aye. Fran Burton,
Aye.
Stephen Chan,
Aye.
Yvette Chappelle Ingram,
Aye.
Katie Dawson,
Aye.
Kathleen King is not here, Ross Lai,
Yes.
Huang Lei,
Yes.
Meredith McKenzie,
Yes.
Thomas Stewart,
Yes.
Bruce Witcher,
Yes.
Deborah Wu.
Yes.
13 ayes.
Thank you very much. For purposes of accommodating a guest, we are going to now go to item number 14, which would actually be on our Friday's agenda item list. And this is a report from the Dental Hygiene Committee of California.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I first of all wanted to thank you for having us here today, and I wanted to go over some of the things that we've been doing since we met in May, and bring some greetings from the California DHCC. First of all, I really wanted to thank this board for the ITR regulations that you've been working on, as well as the collaboration that's been happening between our two agencies, and how excited I am about the consumer that this is going to be serving. And I think it's a really great thing to see the two agencies working together. The second thing I wanted to talk about was when we met in May, we talked about the infection control update that we will be doing this coming year. And there have been a couple of things that have come up with that I think are important for us to be looking at as a board together. And that first thing is that we've had a couple of inquiries on obtaining infection control regulations where they can be found on the board website. Currently, in order to get there, you have to go from laws and regulations to existing regulations to Chapter 1 general provisions that apply to all licensures, to the Article of General Provisions, and then finally to the section for the minimum standards for infection control. In getting to do some consulting with other states, one of the things that we've done in other states is put it right there on the front page so that if anybody's looking for it, it can be easily downloaded and easily obtained. And in fact, in several states, I've been able to help them put together a checklist using their regulations so that it's not only easy to obtain, but very easy to follow. And I'm really going to encourage the committee to look at some other methods of doing this that would make it easier for not only the consumer to know what should be happening in the dental setting, but for the dental professional to see if they're in compliance or not in compliance. As we look at the new CDC codes that the CDC recommendations that came forward this past year, they were published in May, and I think this is such a great opportunity for us to put that together. They gave us a great checklist there that could be a starting ground for all of us to put together something that can be outstanding and make it easier for everyone to be in compliance. The next part of this that I'm very concerned about in going into the public and seeing some of the mobile facilities that we've seen, as well as the public health projects. Last week, the CDC put out a document of concern, a high alert on VA stand downs. They were finding that a lot of the stand downs do not follow the basic regulations that we should be following. And this is something that I hope this committee will look at to see whether or not we're in compliance. We're making sure that if we have a mobile unit being set up, that spore testing is happening at that mobile unit 2 days before the event so you can get the results back. That we're making sure that when somebody puts together something like a VA stand down, that they're following the same regulations you would follow within an office, because the standard of care should not change at all just because we're volunteering. I'm so pleased that this committee together has worked over the years to bring the standard up to the level that it's at. And I'm looking forward to seeing what happens in the future here. especially in getting this on easy access.
Noel,
Yes.
may I interrupt? And
Yes.
what do you mean by stand down?
A stand down is when the VA has an event where they invite doctors, nurses, hygienists, dentists, and they all are standing there to take care of the veterans in
Okay,
the
so-
community.
And that was going to be my next
Yeah.
question. When you say VA, are you meaning Veterans Administration,
Yes,
just to be sure?
yes,
Okay.
sorry, I didn't clarify that, thank you, Karen. And those happen all across the United States. They were able to identify one in particular where every single person that went through their dental system is going to have to be tested. And we want to make sure that we bring that, we take care of that before we have a complaint. The second thing I wanted to talk about was the strategic plan agenda for adoption that we have coming up in the next couple of days. The wonderful thing that we put in within our strategic plan that I think is going to be vital for both of our agencies is we want to do collaboratives. We want to do collaboratives with all the agencies that have something to do with serving this consumer and keeping this consumer safe. And you are one of our core people that we want to be doing that with. And I think this is going to be an example to other states and to other people across the United States on how well we can work together as a team. Where we are on regulations right now, in May, we submitted our regulations for revision, and I think that you guys are finding the same thing as us. We are here in December, and the new process for hearing is in the process of being vetted out, and we are seeing a little bit of time lapse there. So we're working on that. The last two things that I really wanted to make sure that you guys are aware of is how amazing your own staff is. Over this past year, we've worked with Rosa quite a few times on seeing where people were on infection control and the Dental Practice Act and their CEs. And I just want to commend you for your staff member there who's gone way above and beyond to keep the consumer safe by making sure that education is happening in the proper manner. And last, I brought Tony up front with us today. This is Anthony Lum.
Hi, Tony Lum with the Dental Hygiene Committee. I just wanted to say thank you to Karen and Sarah and their staff as well, because our daily operations, we're in the trenches and we're doing all the fun work that's given to us. And our communication has been so good these past few years that I've been with the Dental Hygiene Committee that, going forward, I really appreciate all the efforts that have been put forth. And I hope our relationship continues and improves.
And I second that. It's been wonderful meeting with my group here and finding where a lot of great information is coming. And over this past week, one of the things that is a very happy event for me, but yet a very sad event for me, is that our executive director, this is going to be her last meeting with you as executive director after 30 years of giving to the state at every single level. She's going to be retiring. And as I look at that, as I look at what under her guidance we've accomplished, it is amazing to me. I would be remiss if I did not thank Fran Burton for being there for me, because she had put together a committee to interview in the past. And with her guidance, I've been given such great information, and I can't thank her enough. And I think that's the kind of collaborative that we need to be having between these two boards, and how refreshing it is for me to be able to share that with other people, how great a team we can be in serving the consumer. I'd like to tell Lori how much we've appreciated what she's done to bring access to care and direct access to dental hygienists forward, and I'd like to give her just a moment to say a couple of things.
I'd like to echo a lot of what Tony and Noel has said, regarding the collaborative effort. It's been, I have to say, over my 30 years, it's been a wonderful, fulfilling experience. I just have to say, I've enjoyed my career. Many of you may not know this, but for the first 15 years of my state career, I did spend working at the Dental Board of California. And, my primary responsibility was administering the clinical examination and the restorative technique examination for the foreign trained. And I started at the time when gold foil was going away, And when the CAS restoration came in place, and, I was through 3 major changes of exam changes for the clinical examination, and also the change for the restorative technique examination as well. So, I have great knowledge of dental board laws and regs, as well as the dental hygiene. And again, I want to thank all of you for your continued support in working together. Thank you.
So now I would like to introduce you to our interim executive director who will be appointed tomorrow, which is Anthony Lum. And thank you for having us here today. I'm looking forward to seeing the infection control issues and strengths that we have being brought out to the public and let them know where they can get their information. I'm looking forward to seeing the ITR material move forward, and I'm looking forward to 2017 being the best cooperative year between these two boards that has ever happened. So thank you.
Thank you for coming and sharing. Any
before-
members
be-
of the board have any questions or comments?
Yeah, and before you get up to, I'd like a moment.
Sure.
After the board's had an opportunity.
Any board members have any questions or comments?
Do we have a slated date to get the infection control moving forward at this point?
Tell us when you're available.
Okay. Anytime between the 16th of December and the 9th of
We'll schedule
January?
it. We'll schedule it.
Okay,
We'll
thanks.
schedule it. I just wanted to just take a minute to say, I think Lori and I have had a great working relationship. She has been a wealth of knowledge beyond what I could have imagined and has made my job much, much easier. I believe we do have a collaborative relationship. Of course, we can say that they got their apprenticeship training at the dental board and then moved on to other things. We can say that about Tony. We have missed you being with the dental board. Tony was a budget analyst under Rick Wallander, I think it was. Left shortly after, between Kathy Poncabre, if you all remember these folks, and Richard. So went over to a number of different places before he landed back into the dental profession. So I'll look forward to working with you in your interim position. God bless you in your, retirement years. You've deserved it, and I hope it goes well. Excuse me.
It is emotional.
It's emotional. It's like, I want to be there with you. But you've loved your career. I love my career. When the time comes, we all know it. My time isn't there yet, and just so you all know, this is not my last meeting. So anyway, thank you all. It's a pleasure working with you.
Thank you. Point of personal privilege also. In a former life, I was involved with the CDA, and there are many in this room that have worked hard to build bridges and establish the collaboration that you so elegantly spoke about. And I think that we're in such a good place now moving forward, again, to benefit the consumers. And so kudos to the Hygiene Committee, and thanks for working with us so well. And we will continue to work with you as well, and to the betterment of all. So congratulations, Lori.
Thank you.
I'm glad to hear there's life after work.
Yes.
Thank you.
Fran?
Thank you.
Dr. Stewart, she doesn't go.
Well,
You can teach her. I'm sorry, Fran?
My first meeting was the transition time for the boards, and it was like, hello, goodbye, we're leaving, we're moving next door. It's been just a real pleasure, just a real pleasure. That breakup could have gone a lot of different ways, and the fact that it's been so collaborative is something that has been really important to me. You will be missed. Thank you. You will be missed.
Any other comments, questions? Thank you very much. Appreciate you being here. Just before we go on to the next item, I want to take this opportunity to give a special welcome to one of our former soulmates, member of the dental board, Dr. Dominicis. I see sitting on the second row. Welcome. Good to see you again. I hope all is well in your retirement, from the board, that is, not from practice. So welcome, good to see you. Another announcement real quick is the checkout time, in case you haven't checked it yourself, for the hotel is 12 noon. We will be taking a break sometime between 11:15 and 11:30 for those of you that need to go up and get your luggage and want to check out. We're sort of on a catch-up schedule right now, catching up from items that we were not able to do yesterday. And that our next meeting, our next agenda item will be to convene the Prescription Drug Abuse Committee for their meeting. And as soon as they complete their meeting, then we will reconvene the full board to continue on with our agenda. So for the next few minutes, it will be the Prescription Drug Abuse Committee. So those of you members of the board that are not on that committee have the opportunity to find another seat. We encourage you to sit in the audience and at least participate by listening to the committee's actions.
Tom, am I on that?
Yeah, I'm on it. I almost forgot.
It's all right. It's PDA 1.
We only have 3?
Yeah.
Tom, I'm sorry.
It's all right. I'm going to move, but you stay right where you're at. So you're in a good place.
Really? You're on this movie?
This way people won't have to turn their necks quite so much. It's all right. Good morning. My name is Tom Stewart, and I am the chair of the Prescription Drug Abuse Committee. I'd like to call to order that committee, and I'm going to ask our vice president to establish a quorum and take the roll. Thank you. Steve.
Tom Stewart,
Here.
Steve Afriette here, Yvette Chappelle Ingram.
Here.
Juan Lay,
Here.
Meredith McKenzie, Bruce Witcher,
Yes.
Deborah Wu.
Here. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, we have 6 members and a quorum.
Thank you, Steve.
Just one point of correction.
Oh, there's you. Yeah, yeah. Yvette. Yeah, where's she?
She just walked up. She may not know.
Sure, all right. Let's move to item number 2, approval of the December 3rd, 2015 Prescription Drug Abuse Committee meeting minutes.
Oh, I was just going to say that you introduced Mr. Steve Afriette as vice president.
Vice Chair.
Oh, vice chair. Okay, I'm sorry. I thought I heard vice. Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Just to get it done, because I wasn't here, I'm abstaining, but I move to approve minutes.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye. Or, roll call.
Stewart?
Aye.
Africa abstains. Chappelle Ingram?
Aye.
Lay?
Aye.
McKenzie? Witcher?
Yes.
Wu?
Yes.
5 ayes, 1 abstention, the motion carries.
Thank you. We're now moving to item number 3, which is a discussion and we'll have some possible action to approve the communication plan regarding opioid prescription abuse and misuse for posting on the board's website. And I've asked our staff liaison, Interim Chief Enforcement Officer, Mr. Carlos Alvarez, to put out that background so that we have that context. Carlos?
Good morning. The meeting that we had at the December 3rd, 2015, meeting of the Board Prescription Drug Abuse Committee, PDA Committee. Subcommittee was appointed to work with staff to develop draft prescription guidelines for dental practitioners. Since that time and during 2016, the subcommittee has continued to meet periodically on Saturday, September 9th, 2016, in conjunction with the CDA Presents in San Francisco. Dr. Thomas Stewart, Dr. Hung Lee, California Dental Association representatives, Mary McCune, Megan Aldred, and I met to discuss the ideas of moving forward for the education of dentists, patients, parents, and healthcare providers about the devastating impact that prescription drug abuse is having in our communities. At this time, the subcommittee recommends having a communication plan which initially includes a web page dedicated to prescription drug resources. The idea behind the web page is not only to provide dentists with the information regarding the epidemic of the abuse and misuse of opiate products, but also to provide resources to the dispensing dental practitioners to educate them on the new paradigm of educating the patient on opiate prescription use and the meticulous monitoring of the individual. The dentist is the ultimate decision maker in determining the best course of pain management treatment for his or her patient. However, the board should consider offering the tools to educate the dentist in the public health trends and how this may impact the way they prescribe. The webpage should be continually updated with new materials is available by making it a valuable contemporary resources for the board's licensees. The website will also provide dentists with links to the medical and pharmacy boards, prescription guidelines, and the Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA. These guidelines provide clear expectations to prescribers regarding their role in deciding to prescribe opiates for pain control to their patients, as well as follow-up after treatment has been provided. It will also discuss that many dental practitioners may not recognize the red flags of substance abuse or know what to do. Experts in this substance abuse, as well as others, support services such as local mental health counselors, public health officials, can provide places to refer the patients who are in need of services. Having a link to these local resources may be of great benefit to the practitioner. Other resources that the subcommittee proposed are links to the American Dental Association and California Dental Association, and articles specifically relating to prescription drugs, as well as the American Association of Oral and Maxillofacial Surgeons, articles on prescription, drug abuse, and prevention. Lastly, the California Prescription Drug Monitoring Program, PDMP, also known as CURES, has missions to reduce pharmaceutical drug diversion while promoting legitimate medical and patient care. The PMP collects Schedule 2 through 4 controlled substance prescriptions and dispensation of information to facilitate diversion, awareness, and intervention. Their proposal is to have the webpage contain detailed educational information about CURE system, including the mandatory registration for all California licensed dentists authorized to prescribe, order, administer, furnish, or dispense controlled substances. The CURE system will allow access to the dentist to look up patients' controlled substance usage and history before prescribing controlled substance. Action requested that the Prescription Drug Abuse Committee approve the subcommittee's recommendation to establish a communication plan relating to opiate abuse and misuse, which initially includes a web page dedicated to prescription drug resources, and to recommend the board's approval to approve the posting of these resource links to its website beginning January 1st of 2017.
Thank you, Carlos. So I will suggest that this step that we're about to take with the committee's approval and then the board's approval is a first step for the dental board in establishing a reservoir of information that we can point our dental family to, that the public can get to better understand this very tragic and very serious issue that's confronting the entire country and including the state of California. So I would now like to open up to the committee for their comments on these suggestions.
Move the staff recommendation.
Go ahead and move it, and we can open it.
Well, they can discuss the motion, then we don't have. public
Yeah,
comment as well.
I'll second.
Thank you. Okay.
I don't think we need a second.
Now we can discuss it. Thank you, Steve. Dr. Witcher.
Oh, well, okay, I'll lead off. You know, I've looked at a lot of these links. There's good information there, but it's overwhelming, and a lot of it is not really relevant to dentistry. And I think at one point we had talked about maybe going through and developing or adapting some of the existing material that was more directly related to dental practice, and maybe putting some bullet point summary on there. I mean, as you said, this is a first step, and that's fine, but I'm just suggesting as a subsequent step, we might want to have something that's a little more directly related to what our licensees would be interested in.
Well, that's a great comment, and to that comment, there is some really good information out there. The current course that the CDA is providing at the major meetings with the Dr. Bundy and Dr. Park is specifically relates to dentistry, and so those are some of the some of the information that we're planning on asking maybe for a summary and including on our website. So that's a very comment well taken. Other members?
No, I'm just in agreement with that. I was going to mention that. I think when you're more concise, it's a more direct message.
Well, I think this is the first step, like you said. So yes, a lot of those links, have an overwhelming, amount of information. In our discussion, we have also planned to check out other state boards in the country to see what they have come up with, and some of them have actually come up with very good, talking points and bullet points, related to this issue. So we do also plan to check those out and bring it back to, to our board and also post it on our website.
Any other comments from subcommittee? I'd like to open it up to the public for comment at this time.
Good morning, Alan Felsenfeld, representing myself as a member right now. There was a law that was passed last year that indicated that dentists had to sign up for cures, but it didn't say you had to use it. There's a law that's passed, and I think will be effective January 1st, if I'm not mistaken, that says dentists who are going to prescribe those drugs at the Class 2 level now have to use cures. We at CDA, I know, has put out some information on it, but I think it wouldn't be a bad idea within this webpage or from the board to have a notice to everybody saying, here is the new law, you must pay attention to it.
Thank you, Dr. Felsen. Please.
Gail Matthey, CDA also. I just wanted to reiterate to the board, Dr. Stewart, you mentioned the course that CDA is providing, and that course continues to evolve as the new law comes into place, focusing on how dentists use cures and, really trying to be very proactive with the profession about what's out there, what's required, how to manage it. So to please know that we'll continue to be that partner in the communication and the resource to members.
And that's a fabulous course. I've been to it twice, and the information put out is absolutely wonderful. So thank you.
I was just going to recommend that if this motion is passed today and moved on to the board to essentially get the board's buy-off on establishing a web page to be informational, that the committee could take it upon themselves to bring different material to committee meetings to discuss whether you want it posted on the website. So I think the first step would be, as Dr. Stewart has said, get the board to buy off that this is what your work task will be next year in terms of bringing information to discuss among yourselves and before things go up on the website, so that we don't get in the position of just flooding the website with data that's not very useful. To Dr. Felsenfeld's comment, we will be commenting on this particular legislation in our legislative report, and the department actually is moving forward trying to come up with a message that all of the boards who are utilizing cures would be putting out to their membership. So that meeting is actually taking place today, and so when I get back next week, I'll get filled in on what the things were that were discussed.
Thank you, Karen. Any further discussion either from the subcommittee members or the public? Seeing none, we have a motion.
Tom Stewart,
Aye.
Steve Affrey, aye. Yvette Chip,
Aye.
Bonaway,
Aye.
Bruce Witcher,
Yes.
Deborah Wu,
Yes?
6-0, the motion carries.
All right. That concludes our agenda, so that was pretty painless. Thank you. Okay.
I need a motion to call it Analyst.
So we'll call the board members back to the dais.
You're very welcome.
Well, believe it or not, we are now on Friday.
Officially.
Welcome to Friday, right? Okay. So our next agenda item is item number 13. This is always a high point of our meetings. And this is when our executive officer has as much time as she wants and needs to give her report.
Settle in, folks.
Buckle up.
Here we go. Well, good morning. My name is Karen Fisher, and I'm the Executive Officer of the Dental Board. I was sworn in to this position as the Interim Executive Officer 4 years ago this coming Monday. I never believed I would be serving 4 years. It has gone by like that. It's been exciting, it's been fulfilling, it's been challenging, it's been awesome. I am so grateful to have had this opportunity, I can't even tell you. I love doing what I'm doing, and I love working with all of you, and it's great. I don't know that you had an opportunity to actually look at the strat plan. Something that you didn't review while you were doing the strat plan was essentially our recent accomplishments that have occurred since our last strat plan, which happened to coincide with essentially me being the executive officer. So we started off essentially with you appointing me, and then we had to appoint an assistant executive officer. And remarkably now, we're to the point where Our management team is almost complete. With Teresa Lane leaving, we will be recruiting for the permanent position of our Chief of Enforcement. We hope that that will be happening soon. There's been a little bit of a delay. They need to create a new state list. And so we're hoping that once that is done, we'll be able to recruit and to be able to fill that position. The line managers are complete. When I came on, we had 2 managers that were pretty well on the way out the door, having served for many years with the state. So we've had a very high turnover among our staff people. We've gotten some new people from the outside. We've gotten some good people who have great attitudes, who are willing to work. I think the course has been set to accomplish great things in the coming years, and I'm looking forward to it. Setting the accomplishments aside, that brings us to essentially our vacancies. We have had a lot of turnover, as I've mentioned, particularly under operations, which includes licensing, administration, and dental assisting. Zachary Rasky, who, when I have a senior moment, I call Josh for some reason. So our cue is if I call him Josh, he's done something wrong. So far, he's Zachary. Zach, welcome. He has come over he was one of our investigative analysts, and he has expressed an interest in learning about all aspects of the board. So he now has taken over our budget analyst position. And welcome, Zach. Of course, we can't deny our little Lucy. She's been with us for about a year now as our legislative and regulatory analyst. We're getting some really awesome people who are going to be able to help us really move forward with accomplishing great things. We have one additional opening right now in the administrative units. Of course, that's the executive assistant. That's the position that was formerly held by Linda Byers. I believe the final filing date for that position is next week, and so I'll be interviewing to fill behind her. That left a big gap, and thank you for your patience. If your hotel and your travel has been a little not quite there, please be patient with us as we have had other staff filling in and trying to make accommodations for everybody. The licensing unit is also coming along. I can say that this past week, Bernie Vaba, who's the licensing manager, has put together trainings for all the licensing analysts. When I first came on, we were talking about how a lot of state employees work within a silo and they only do one thing. We have converted over essentially all of our analysts in the licensing positions to be cross-trained, to be able to cover each other's desks, and to be able to answer a lot of the questions there so that we're not relying on any one person should they decide to leave or not be able to come to work, that we're scrambling to try to get answers or to assist the public. So we just have one vacancy at this time in that unit. Dental assisting, we had 2 of our key analysts, I call them journey level analysts, leave, and we're in the process of recruiting. And so that's moving along. We'll be anxious to fill those positions quickly. We have had the opportunity to offer promotions to our staffs, so we feel that that's actually come a long way. So because we've had the movement, we've been able to have people who are already on staff interview. That's good for 2 reasons as far as I'm concerned. It gives them a job opportunity to move up, as well as having them there so that they can train the person coming behind them in what their job was. So you're a little short on time for only a brief time until the training can take place. We do have a gap in our enforcement unit, as Carlos had mentioned when we were talking about statistics. And it takes a long time to get through the background checks when we're trying to hire our sworn investigators. But we're nearly there. By January 1st, there's a strong possibility we will have all of those positions filled, and then we'll be able to really tackle the backlog. The good news is that they're experienced people who would be coming in who have worked for other departments, so they know the drill. So their training will be minimal and should be able to hit the ground running. And those positions, the majority of them are in our Orange County office. The complaint and compliance unit is fully fully staffed and is working well. And we're all looking forward to, like I said, turning the calendar over, starting a new year, and digging our heels in and getting started with all the work. The next item I was going to talk about was essentially updating the minimum standards on infection control. Noel Kelch had touched on that. By statute, we're required to work with the Hygiene Committee to continually update the infection control guidelines. We anticipate putting the subcommittee together perhaps by the end of the year, if not the very first part of next year, and see what types of things need to be updated. We typically look at the CDC guidelines, anything else that's out there, and they haven't been revised, I'm going to say, for a couple of years. So that will be a project on our agenda. Form 700, folks, you will be getting an email from NetFile, and they've made it really easy, but I would suggest not waiting till the last minute. They still won't be due until April 1st, but you will be getting some sort of a notice electronically. You already got it? Okay, I think it went out prematurely, but and staff will be following up. Typically, we'll be following up on February 1st and March 1st, just to make sure everybody gets everything filed on time.
It's important for people to note, I do these on 2 or 3 different governmental levels. I got mine early, I don't know if anyone else did, but we cannot do it until at least January 1st, because the reporting period is for this year. Sorry.
I know some people got notices and others didn't, so I didn't know whether there's some sort of a quirky thing. Just a reminder about required training for board members. If you do get reappointed, you do need to retake the orientation, the day-long orientation. I believe that actually Dr. Witcher and Dr. Lay got caught up recently. They participated in that. It really has come along into a very informative process. Next year, 2017, is the mandatory sexual harassment prevention training. Try to maintain your excitement. I know this comes along all too quickly. It's the mandatory 2 hours that you can't really get through faster than 2 hours. But they've done, you have the option of doing, I believe, in your own time now, at your own computer. And so we'll be sending out notices with that link of where to go do that. We'll be trying to catch everybody up on whether they need to do their driver's training and ethics. Ethics needs to be done every 4 years. We'll try to put together the list of who needs to do that. So we'll be putting that information out. What else I have here on my agenda is the update regarding the Children's Dental Group of Anaheim. Typically, I wouldn't report out on something like this. It has been in the media where essentially in early September, the Orange County Children's Hospital notified the Orange County Public Health Agency of a serious issue of children being admitted to the hospital with Mycobacterium abscessus. And the reason I'm bringing this up essentially is to emphasize that the dental board and the public health department work closely together when events like this come up. Again, as to our recollection, Orange County Public Health and mine, we haven't had to work together on a situation like this before, so we were feeling our way on whose authority would do what. So upon hearing that children were getting sick, and it seemed that their experts in epidemiology at Public Health in Orange County determined that all the children had been treated by a certain dental facility in Anaheim, and all had received a certain care, pulpotomies. And at that point, they called us because they hadn't ever had any experience with a dental clinic before, and we talked it through. Essentially, they went in and tested the water. We obviously don't have people to do water testing, and determined that they had a problem with their water. So upon the testing, it takes about 3 days after the testing to get the results. Upon getting the results, they issued a cease and desist order to the clinic to essentially don't do any procedures that would require the use of the water, and that they would remain in that state, if you will, until they replaced their water system and it tested clean. The order was actually lifted November 8th because they went back in. The Children's Dental Group of Anaheim was very cooperative. They replaced everything that they needed to replace and have since come up with a plan. As I said, the reason I'm explaining this to you is because we did not have the authority to go in and shut them down. Public health does. They kept us apprised all along the way. Now, for quality of care issues, I will only say that investigations have been opened, and I can't share anything beyond that. But I just, as I said, I'm bringing this up to let you know that we have successfully worked very well with Orange County Public Health, and we'll continue to do that, sharing information and learning a lot as we're going along the way. Anybody have any questions? Okay, before I end my report, I wanted to take this opportunity to recognize our outgoing president, Dr. Morrow. And on behalf of the members of the board, we have gotten you a little token of our appreciation, and I would just like to present it to you at this time. It says to Stephen Morrow, DDS-MS, President of the Dental Board through the year of 2016, in grateful appreciation for your outstanding service and leadership. Thank you, Dr. Morrow.
Thank you very much, Karen. Have you completed your report?
I have completed my report.
Okay. Any comments or questions from members of the board regarding Karen's report? Okay. I have a comment to make, okay? As president of the board, I understand, and I am still Norbright president.
You are? Till
Okay,
January
great.
1st?
Oh, this wasn't a farewell plaque, but thank you. Anyway, I understand as president that I have the privilege as well as sometimes the responsibility to speak on behalf of the board. And so with that, I want to tell you that speaking for the board, we love what you do as well, and we love the way you do it, okay? So speaking for the board, you are a fantastic and have been a fantastic executive officer. You have met all of our needs, exceeded our expectations, and we are extremely lucky to have you as our executive officer.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Thank you. But it's not all about me. It's about Dr. Morrow. So, thank you, though.
We're a team. The whole group is a team, obviously. Okay, so.
We'd like to hear from you, Dr. Morrow. You're on your way out.
Well, you know, this has obviously been a very interesting year for all of us. It started out, you know, with a, what should I say, a bang, with our letter from Senator Hill, obviously requesting the investigation, which then later turned into legislation that went in the same direction. We've had a busy year. The activities involving the application and site visit for an international, for a foreign dental school was very time-consuming on the board's part, time-consuming on a few of us, and I will be giving a more detailed report on that later on in an agenda item. This year has presented challenges for all of us. Certainly for me as your president, I appreciate your trust in me and your willingness to go out on a limb and allow me to be your president and to be your representative for this last 12 months. So I thank you very much. It has been an honor and will continue to be an honor. I still have, I think it's 3 years left of my second term on the board. So even though I will be moving to a different chair on the dais for the next meeting, I will still be here for a while. So I appreciate everything that you have done to help us accomplish what we have accomplished and have needed to accomplish. Appreciate it very much. Now, where are we? We've already done the dental hygiene reports, so we're on legislation. And Lucy's going to lead us out in that. And we're certainly glad to have Lucy.
Lucy Sarkisian for the Dental Board of California, Legislative and Regulatory Analyst. For Agenda Item 15A, it's the 2017 tentative legislative calendar. It was just recently posted, and so we will be providing that to the board members at the end of the meeting, or once we get back to the office, we'll email everybody a copy of the new calendar that was posted. Okay. For Agenda Item 15B, the end of two-year legislative summary for 2015-2016. So throughout the 2015-2016 legislative session, the Legislative and Regulatory Committee and the board tracked several bills, at least 26 bills, that would impact the Dental Board of California. And below they're listed kind of all the bills that we've been following. And attached to this memo is the legislative summary for the end of two-year legislative session, 2015-2016. If everyone can go to page page 1 of the attachment, they're all kind of labeled. You will see all the kind of the bill summaries of all the bills that were enacted or signed by the governor. Just to kind of touch on a few of them, we had AB 179. It's one of the statutes of 2015. It was the board's Healing Arts bill that primarily resulted in the increase in the statutorily authorized fee maximums relating to dentist and dental assistant licensure and permitting fees, among other provisions that it made. We had AB 502, the Dental Hygiene Bill, which amended the Dental Hygiene Practice Act and the Moscone-Knox Professional Corporation Act, authorized a registered dental hygienist and alternative practice to incorporate with specified licensees. We had AB 880, which authorized students enrolled in their final year at a California dental school to practice dentistry under the supervision of a licensed dentist at free sponsored events. We also this year had AB 2235 that we've heard about, that we've talked about, which is Caleb's Law, which requires the board to submit the report to the legislature by January 1, among other things. That will kind of talk a little bit more as we discuss our implementation plan for that bill. We also have AB 2331, which is kind of known as our ADEX bill, which permits the board to recognize the American Dental Examining Board's examination once the exam undergoes and satisfies the requirement of Business and Professions Code 139, which is to kind of undergo the occupational analysis and the psychometric validation. And then we also have AB 2485, which regards the amendment to the Dental Corp's loan repayment program, specifically relating to the amendments regarding time frame of disbursement, the payee, and other provisions relating to eligibility, application, selection, and placement. We talked about this throughout last year and this year also, and so we also have an implementation plan for the Dental Corp loan repayment program. The next we have is AB 2859, which authorizes boards to establish a retired license category by regulation for those licensees who are not actively engaged in the practice of their profession. And we also have is SB 482, which relates to the controlled substance cures database, which requires licensees who are prescribers of Schedule 2 or Schedule 3 controlled substances to consult with the cures database before prescribing controlled substances to patients for the first time, and once every 4 months thereafter if the substance remains part of the patient's treatment plan. And then we also have or had SB 800, which was the Healing Arts Omnibus Bill from 2005. We also had SB 1039. We were following that bill, which contained language relating to the foreign dental school application process, which was struck out, and we stopped following that bill, but the other provisions were approved or signed. We also had SB 1348, which regarded military licensees, which requires each board that has authority to apply military experience and training towards licensure requirements to post information on the board's internet website about the ability of a veteran applicant to apply their military experience and training towards the licensure requirement. So this may be part of the license by credential aspect. And then we also had this year's Omnibus Bill, SB 1478, which was referring to taking out Part 1 and Part 2 wording of the written examinations of the National Board of Dental Examination of the Joint Commission on National Dental Examinations, and just replacing it with the word examination. And if you flip the page, it kind of gives you the list of all the bills that were enrolled, as well as which ones were vetoed and which ones were chaptered. And so in our next agenda item, we'll focus on 4 primary ones that definitely affect the dental board and what we're going to be doing, at least for next year and ongoing. Does anybody have any questions about this? And so at this time, staff is requesting that the board consider and possibly adopt the attached legislative summary for the end of 2-year legislative session for 2015-2016, and direct staff to post the report on the board's website.
Okay, thank you, Lucy. Do we have a motion, such a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Any items of discussion from the members of the board or questions? Open it up to members of the public in attendance. Any comments or questions?
Brianna Pittman with the California Dental Association. Just wanted to make a comment on AB 2485, which was a CDA-sponsored bill. Want to thank the staff and the legislative committee for working with us on language and sort of figuring that bill out and being really great partners in that bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Thank you. Call the question, we take the roll.
Stephen Morrow?
Yes.
Judith Forsyth?
Yes.
Steve Afriat, aye. Fran Burton?
Aye.
Stephen Chan?
Aye.
Yvette Chappelle Ingram?
Aye.
Katie Dawson?
Aye.
Ross Lai?
Yes.
Huang Lei?
Aye.
Meredith McKenzie? Thomas Stewart?
Yes.
Bruce Witcher?
Yes.
Deborah Wu?
Yes.
12 ayes.
Thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item 15C.
So as I mentioned, we had key legislation that was signed into law, and those were Assembly Bill 2235, Assembly Bill 2331, and 2485, and SB 482. And so for each bill, we have kind of an implementation plan listed. And so starting with AB 2235, which is Caleb's Law, we would need to submit the draft report by January 1 to the legislature. And we would have to work with the Office of Information Services to post that report publicly on the board's website. We will be assigning staff to begin drafting a report on the pediatric deaths related to general anesthesia in dentistry for our sunset review. We would need to create an incident reporting form and work with OIS to upload the form on the board's website for licensee use when reporting comes up. Also notify licensees of the availability of the incident reporting form, and notify licensees about the requirement to incorporate the mandated informed consent statement on patient forms for procedures relating to conscious sedation or general anesthesia. Any questions about that? Okay. And so for AB 2331, our 8X bill, which basically kind of requires the board to accept the examination developed by ADEX as a pathway to licensure. And so in order to implement the provisions of the bill, we would need to kind of obtain first governor's approval for the budget process. The occupational analysis and the examination validation would need to be performed by the Office of Professional Services. A payment schedule will need to be established with ADEX for each phase of performing the review and the analysis that are required. The promulgation of regulations are also needed to implement the licensure application requirements. And we'll be providing notice to dental schools, both in the state of California and the United States, of the additional pathway, possibly by maybe posting it on our website or notifying the state of California once the ADEX examination passes or satisfies Business and Professions Code 139, then we can proceed with that notice. And the next would be to update the board's website to incorporate information regarding the process in which to apply for this pathway to licensure. Any questions about the ADEX examination?
Just one.
Go ahead.
I know this is probably premature, but do we have any idea how many, if any, schools would like to host that exam?
No. No, but the way the bill was written, ADEX recognized that the board, that the California Dental Board was moving in the direction of a patient-centered exam. And so they wrote the legislation in a way that essentially allows us to restrict the pathway to only those schools who offer that type of portfolio pathway. I don't see this pathway being available for a while. I'm going to say 18 months to 2 years, just because of how long it takes. But what I did want to mention, it was brought to our attention, this bill goes into effect January 1st. Had we started doing something in January, we would have likely had to absorb the cost, because essentially the cost to move forward with this is in the current budget, and so it hasn't been approved. We just sort of stumbled on that and told OPES, whoa, we now need to move this not to start until next fiscal year, just to give you a heads up. So we would have been going along our merry way thinking, wow, we're getting on this and we're moving, and oh, by the way, you're going to have to pay for this on your own, which all along we've said we couldn't afford. So it requires actually getting budget authority to expend the money. We will pay for it and we will be reimbursed. If at some point they don't reimburse us, then the pathway doesn't go through. So I think that the safeguards are built in, but no, Dr. Witcher, we don't know how many people would utilize this. We don't know. We really don't know.
Also, I have a question too. At some point in time, it will be necessary for us as a board to make a decision as to which format of that examination that we choose to accept. And I think the way that the bill is written, as I recall, stated that the board could choose which format was acceptable. Now, that means that we could choose both formats if we so desired. We could choose one or the other. Obviously, that's a decision that's not for discussion at this point. I'm just saying that at some point in time, we're going to have to, as a board, make that choice. And obviously, it's going to have to be done before or in conjunction with writing the regulations to implement, which is down the road some ways yet. So.
Right. We have it on, staff has it on the list of things to do. And so in August, the board reviews regulatory packages. So it will start to appear on that list, essentially, that we'll just keep working on until we get to that point. But yes, that the regulations would need to be done prior to the pathway being available.
So I have a question.
Yes.
Will the occupational analysis and examination validation will be performed on both formats?
No, from what I understand, the examination is the same. It's just how it's administered. And I believe ADEX, the ADEX representatives came and told us that. So they will, I believe, OPES will be doing the evaluation on, I'll call it their old method and the one that is primarily used, I believe, still by regional testing agencies. I don't know how many regional testing agencies or schools have taken up their Buffalo model. So that's still essentially unknown.
That's yet to be determined. Yeah. You asked about schools in California that were willing to host the ADEX examination. Dr. Witcher asked that. Or did you, was your question relating to schools in California that are willing to?
Just California.
Right. I do not believe that the legislation that was passed requires or mandates that any schools in California host that examination. Obviously, I can't speak for the schools. I can only speak for myself. And that's again, is an unknown. There's some inconvenience to the schools, obviously, to host an examination of that type, because we basically need to shut down our operations for a few days to accommodate the examination process, because for one thing, security of the examination does not allow freedom of movement throughout the school for our students and our faculty and staff while the exam is being conducted, as well as the fact that our clinical chairs that our students would otherwise be using to provide patient care are being utilized by the candidates that are taking the exam. So we have to look at a cost-benefit factor every time that we enter into contracts for testing agencies to utilize our facilities for the examination process. And that obviously, you say, well, we get compensated for the loss of our production because the testing agency pays for the use of the school. That cost is passed on to the candidates, obviously. So those are things that we have to negotiate, on a regular basis, and then we do sign contracts for that. So how many schools in California are willing to or want to go into that type of a contract is yet to be seen. So.
The next bill we have is the AB 2485, which regards the Dental Corp loan repayment program. And so this bill made the following major changes, which one was redefining full-time status. It expanded the definition of recently received a license to include students, or to include applicants eligible for graduation who meet all criteria for licensure, to apply to all those applicants who hold a valid dental license. Dispersing loan repayment amount of $35,000 each year for 3 years, not to exceed the $105,000 or the total amount of the dental school-related loans, whichever was lesser. Dispersing the loan repayment amount directly to the lender and not to the student or the applicant, and dispersing the loan repayment amount within 30 days from the execution of a program agreement and within 30 days of months 13, 20, and 25 of the applicant's participation in the program. And so those were kind of the major changes that the bill made to help kind of streamline our dental loan repayment program. And so these changes primarily will affect Section 1042 through 1042.4. The pertinent provisions relating to the changes made in this bill will undergo regulatory changes. Additionally, the application form for the Dental Corp's loan repayment program would need to undergo various modifications to reflect the most current statute. Below outlined are the steps that we would need to take to implement AB 2485. And one of the main primary focuses is the kind of taking care of the regulations first before implementing. So one of them is to create a statement, possibly on the board's website, should we choose, that beginning April 1st, 2017, the board will open applications for the Dental Corp loan repayment program. This will provide the board ample time to submit the Section 100 changes to the Office of Administrative Law, update the application form, and get approval from OAL, and conduct outreach with dental schools and societies. Possibly provide a memo to all dental schools and dental societies informing them of the Dental Corp loan repayment program, application acceptance date, and encouraging each entity to provide such information to their eligible graduating students. So it's kind of going to be a very important, strong focus on providing notice to both the dental schools, the students, kind of working with dental societies, potentially using the California Dental Association to get everybody working together to distribute this money that we have. And before doing that, we would need to make some regulatory changes to be consistent with statute so that students can begin applying and go through that.
Any comments or questions? Yes.
Yeah, well, I just want to thank the board and staff for working on this legislation. Just a major change alone of dispersing the loan prepayment amount directly to the lender and not to the applicant will make a huge difference, because I understand that that has been the deterrent, for a lot of the applicants. They did not want to apply for this loan because when they receive the $35,000 paid directly to them, that is added to their income. So there's a tax liability on that amount. The fact that now it is going to go directly to the lender, it doesn't appear as their income. And, so I think that this change alone will really enhance, the program and would encourage a lot more, applications. So I just want to thank the board and also the staff, for working on this legislation.
I just want to make a comment. I think we need to be careful as a board that we do not give tax advice relating to whether or not the payment directly to the lender is going to bypass, from a tax standpoint, the loan recipient from needing to declare that as income. Again, I'm not saying that it isn't, but I think that we should be careful that we don't do anything other than consult with your tax consultant to determine whether this will be, by paying it directly to the lender, whether this will need to be reported as income or not. Because I certainly don't want to get caught in that kind of a trap.
Yeah, I appreciate that comment, but I believe that this mirrors the medical board loan repayment program, and that's
Okay.
how that's how it's been administered, as I understand, and also it mirrors the state loan repayment program and also the National Health Service course, so.
But again, I think we need to be careful that we don't give tax advice.
I'm in agreement. We need to always say that as a qualifier, even if we're 99% sure, because that keeps us out of the, keeps us out. And so.
Yeah, no, I understand that, and I appreciate the comment. I'm just saying, from my conversations, with a lot of people that are interested in it, that was one of the points that they brought to my attention, so I just thought I would share.
Understand.
Got it.
Any other questions or comments? I will bring it up to the public. Do we have any comments or questions from members of the public on this agenda item?
Dr. Guy Atchison, California Academy of General Dentistry. Can I have a question on 2331, the ADEX bill? Or is it just this point of legislation?
No,
Because
it's
I didn't
okay.
hear public
I
comment.
didn't call a comment previously, so I will allow it. Go for it.
Okay. I was here when I heard all those presentations. It was unclear to me. No?
It's not on here is what you're saying?
It's on.
It's on, he just didn't get to comment on it before.
Okay, all right.
Go ahead.
Okay. I guess the question for me is, or from me is, this requirement for the board to consider accepting the ADEX exam for licensure, is that only if the ADEX exam is administered within the state of California, or does this open up ADEX exams that are given anywhere in the country to be qualified for licensure in California?
My understanding, I think our understanding is that it will be wherever the ADEX exam was administered, but not whenever the exam was administered. I have some concerns regarding how far back does an applicant go in passing the ADEX exam to qualify?
I think
Does
we
it-
have that. I think it's a year. I think we have that actually in the legislation,
Okay.
which is awesome because we don't have that for rep.
Good. So that means the Buffalo model, which is a portfolio type examination presentation in a school in New York, monitored or delivered by ADEX, would qualify for an applicant for California.
That's true if we as a board decide to accept that format of the exam.
Okay.
And only at the time that it becomes, that the regulations become effective, do the students participating in that program, are they able to apply for the pathway?
Okay.
So it's not, so in essence, if somebody's going through that pathway now in New York, they would not be eligible until the regulation would be in effect that allows that pathway to open. It would only be then that graduates of that program would be accepted as a
Good.
pathway.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And also, I just want to point out that through licensure by credential, we have been accepting ADEX exam for some time. Because when we accept an applicant for a license by credential from another state who obtained that license through ADEX, through CERTA, through NERB, through whoever, we are in essence accepting the results of that examination because we're accepting them a license without an additional exam. So we've been accepting the results of ADEX exam for some time. Just not as that, but it's sort of around it's being done, so. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay.
And the final bill for implementation we have is SB 482, which is the Cures Bill, which again requires licensees who are authorized to prescribe controlled substances to consult with the Cures database to review a patient's controlled substance history. Also, it's important to note that those licensees who fail to check the Cures database or fail to comply with the provisions of the bill, they are required to be referred to the appropriate state professional licensing board for administrative sanctions as deemed appropriate by that board. And so, as Karen mentioned, the department will be having a meeting or hosting a meeting to discuss the implementation for SB 482. And once more details are available, we'll present it to the board. But if anyone has any questions about this or comments, we'll take it.
This will be a work in progress due to the sentence that says essentially somebody who fails to check will be referred to their state board and are required to be, for appropriate sanctions. We'll need to define through regulation what appropriate sanction is.
Interesting, too. Also, I was just focusing on that specificity of that wording. And it said, referred to the appropriate state professional licensing board for administrative sanctions.
Well, that's what everything we do, citations, discipline, it's all administrative,
Okay,
as opposed to criminal.
all right, got it. Any more comments or questions? Okay. Public, any comments or questions from the public up to this point? Don't want to leave you out. Okay, thank you. Okay. Now, just so that we're all on the same page, I think we're moving to agenda item 15D, which would be an update on pending regs. Is that correct? Is that where we are? Okay, good.
So for our regulations or our, a kind of an update on our pending regulations, for 2016, we had the abandonment of applications. The final rulemaking file was submitted to the Office of Administrative Law on August 5th. OL approved the rulemaking and filed it with the Secretary of State on September 19th. And this went into effect, this rulemaking went into effect on will go into effect January 1st, 2017. So this is completed and it's kind of crossed off our list of regulations. The next we had for this year was the delegation of authority to the executive officer. And so this regarded the delegation of authority to the board's executive officer to approve settlement agreements for the revocation, surrender, or interim suspension of a license without requiring the board to vote to adopt the settlement. And so this was also approved by OAL, and it was filed with the Secretary of State, and this went into effect on July 1st, 2016. Okay? Next we have is the Dental Assisting Comprehensive Regulatory Proposal. The Dental Assisting Council continues to hold the regulatory development workshops as part of the Dental Assisting Comprehensive Regulatory Proposal, and as language is being developed, that will be presented to the board for consideration at a future board meeting. Next we have is the elective facial cosmetic surgery permit application requirements and renewal. And we discussed this yesterday, and the board has directed staff to initiate the rulemaking, so we'll be taking the necessary steps to go ahead and initiate the rulemaking and begin the process. The next regulatory rulemaking we have is the licensure by credential application requirements. We briefly discussed this yesterday, and we'll continue the discussion of the presented draft language to move forward with the regulating language for our upcoming board meeting in February to move forward with the proposed language. For the continuing education requirements and basic life support equivalency standards, the staff is still continuing to research and develop the proposed language, and we'll present it to the board for consideration at a future meeting. Mobile and portable dental units, the documents have been drafted, and they will be submitted to legal for review before going forward with the next steps. The dentistry and dental assisting licensing and permitting fee increase. At our August 19 meeting, the board considered comments received during the 45-day public comment period and voted to modify that text in response to some of the comments. The board directed staff to notice the modified text for 15-day public comment, which included the amendments discussed at the meeting. The notice of the modified text and the were noticed on the board's website and mailed to interested parties on August 25th, 2016. And the 15-day comment period began on August 26th and ended September 10th, and no comments were received. And as a result, staff submitted the final rulemaking filed to the Department of Consumer Affairs on September 30th, 2016. And so now we are waiting for each department and agency to review the rulemaking file. Next we have is the defining discovery and filing. Board staff has filed the initial rulemaking documents with the office with OAL on Tuesday, August 2nd, and the proposal was published on the California Regulatory Notice Registry on Friday, August 12th. The 45-day public comment period began and ended, and no comments were received. And as a result, it was submitted to the department for review on September 30th. Next we have is the institutional standards. We'll be discussing that later in agenda item 17 further, and so I'll just leave that when we discuss it for the next agenda item. The interim therapeutic restoration competency standards for instruction. Please refer back to yesterday's meeting. We'll be working with the DHCC to develop and kind of further the rulemaking for this. And that's it. Any questions about the regulatory or regulations packages?
And Lucy's nickname is Staff. Just in case you were wondering, she doesn't have a team. Staff is doing the
Lucy.
work is Lucy, so her nickname is Staff.
You know, as I mentioned, well, any other comments or questions from the board?
I have
up to
a
this
quick
point?
question.
Yes.
First of all, thank you. There's a lot of information here. So if the rulemaking process does not yield any comments, it does not come back to the board for action.
Correct,
But
because,
if there's any comments, then it comes back to the board for action.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
And I may just quickly say that there's another step that's been included in this process, so it may take a little longer. It's kind of a joke, how many lawyers does it take to look at a package as it goes through? And we have a lawyer preparing our package, and we have another lawyer reviewing it, and then I think there are 5 more lawyers in the process. No offense, guys, I'm just saying. So they did add an extra step, so we're hoping that it will move along. And we'll keep you posted on whether it can move along.
I am not a lawyer.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the public up to this point? Okay, we're going to take a real, as I said before we started our session, we're going to break around 11:15, 11:30, so that those of you who have not checked out can do so. So we're going to take a 15-minute break right now for purposes of whatever you need to do, including but not limited to checking out and getting your suitcases. So we will reconvene at 11:45. Thanks. You know, 15 minutes goes by real fast, doesn't it? Even 20 minutes goes by very fast. But who's keeping time, right?
I don't even know what it looks like, Barbara, like Phyllis Diller.
Okay, again, just to make sure that we're all together, we are now starting item number 15E, the Omnibus Bill Proposal. Karen, is that yours?
That's mine.
Okay.
Okay. Actually, this was brought to my attention a couple of weeks ago, essentially that in the piece of legislation that authorized the well, to make a long story short, this issue is going to be dealt at a different level, so I'm asking that we take it off the agenda.
Okay, that entire, okay. No, so we're going then to, I'm
And
sorry.
just a question on that.
Can you have a question on that?
That
It's not on the agenda.
does not preclude us from participating in the annual omnibus bill that the Senate does, if we have other cleanup language.
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, moving on to agenda item 15F.
For
Yes, Lucy, go.
For agenda item 15F, stakeholders are encouraged to submit proposals in writing to the board before or during the meeting or for possible consideration by the board at a future meeting of any legislative proposals.
Do we have any proposals for, from stakeholders? Can you give me a definition of a stakeholder? Is a board member considered a stakeholder or no? No. So stakeholders are not, board members are not stakeholders. So stakeholders in this room would be you out there in the audience. So
It's a public comment opportunity.
it's a public comment opportunity.
The associations, even dentists, licensed dentists on the board. There's other individuals who might be interested in what the issues are for the board.
Okay, moving forward. Yes.
However, this has morphed into this form. When this originally became a standing item, it was an opportunity also for the board to submit proposals in writing.
In writing only, though, but not verbally without being in writing.
It was done that way to avoid, or to encourage, rather, if board members had something that we had supporting information to, that it not just be a concept that someone else had to develop.
Got it. With that said, do we have any comments? Yes, Bruce.
Yeah, there's actually a form that you fill out that has the criteria for legislation. And it's it's just a simple outline, maybe 5 points. And if people have ideas, it's good to pull that and fill it in. And that way you could, if you really had something you wanted to do, you'd have some supporting information.
And is that form available on our website?
I'm not sure where I found it, but it's out there somewhere. I'm sure Lucy could come up with it.
That sounds really user-friendly.
Thank you, Fran.
Okay,
Fran knows about it.
Thank you, Bruce. Appreciate that. Okay. All right, are we finished with that one? Okay, moving on to agenda item 16. The discussion and possible action regarding the dental school's application from the Republic of Moldova and appointment to the site visit evaluation team was conducted some time ago. Site visit team was formed and conducted the site visit at the University of Moldova. And in your packet, there is a summary of the report and the site visit, as well as the detailed report of the site visit itself. Obviously, I don't think we need to go through the detailed report. The summary, I think, is sufficient for us. However, if you certainly have any questions on the detailed report, I'd be glad to address those for you. The on-site inspection of the University of Medicine and Pharmacy, Nicolae Testamentanu, and the Republic of Moldova's Faculty and School of Dentistry was conducted on October 3 to 6 of 2016. And a copy of that inspection and evaluation report, a detailed copy, is available for you. Site visit team wants to express their sincere appreciation and thanks to members of the Dental Board's executive officer and staff for hours and hours of work. Board members Fran Burton and Bruce Witcher for the review of the initial application. And I apologize for being human, but I, in error, left off that Dr. Hong Lei spent a significant amount of time reviewing the final application and preparing a report to the Dental Board to consider that application as complete. And Hong, I apologize for not recognizing you in this report. That was a significant contribution. The site visit team is also very appreciative of the administration, the faculty, the students, and the staff at the State University of Medicine and Pharmacy, Nicolae Testamentanu in the Republic of Moldova, for their gracious hospitality and their tolerance for the disruptions and interruptions of their academic and clinical schedules resulting from the site visit team's inspection and review. It was an intensive process requiring a number of people to be in the same place at the same time. And it was a well-orchestrated and well-managed process by the university. I personally want to extend my sincere thanks and appreciation to Dr. Octavia Plesch and Dr. Timothy Martinez, who accompanied me along with our staff member, Zachary Rasky. The four of us constituted the team. Just so that to remind you, Dr. Octavia Plesch is a prosthodontist, holds a faculty position as a full professor at the University of California, San Francisco. She has been on faculty at that school for in excess of 30 years. She was actually born and grew up in Romania, which is a neighboring country to Moldova. She left Romania, she and her husband left in their mid-20s and came to the United States. Dr. Timothy Martinez was the other member, a dentist member of the team. Dr. Martinez has also been in dental education for, I think, a little over 20 years now. He is currently an associate dean at the School of Dentistry of New England in Maine. And he formerly was a faculty member at the Western University in Pomona School of Dentistry, where he was the Associate Dean for Community Outreach and Community Clinics, which is what the position that he holds at the University of New England at the present time. These were very valuable members of the site visit team. Dr. Plesh helped us extensively in interpretation, being native language of Romanian, and also being very skilled in the terminology of dentistry and the translation of the interpretation from English to Romanian, Romanian back to English. One of the, and it always is this way, one of the challenges that we have in reviewing and doing site visits on international or foreign dental schools is the interpretation. Many things happen as a result of us asking for something in English and then them providing us something that doesn't look like what we asked for, okay? So sometimes we had to keep working with that until we finally were able to obtain what it was that we were asking for. And it was nobody's fault. It's just, that's what happens, you know, in that type of a process, in that type of a situation. But it was the staff and the faculty and the students there were exceptionally cordial, helpful in any way that they could be, provided us with everything that we needed, fantastic food for lunch in their commissary, more than we could possibly eat, and delicious food at that. I want to cut this as short as I can. As a result of the on-site inspection and evaluation, the site visit team determined that the dental education program at the State University of Medicine and Pharmacy, Nicolae Testămătanu of the Republic of Moldova is in compliance with all institutional standards and substandards identified in California Code of Regulations, Section 1024.1, except for the following. Number one, Institutional Standard C, Educational Program Curriculum, Substandard 6. And you can find this in the detailed report if you choose to look this up. That standard states the educational program shall be designed to ensure that graduates are at a minimum competent in providing all of the following types of oral health care within the scope of general dentistry to all types of patients. Now, that's a detailed list of competencies. And the second was that number 2, Institutional Standard C, number 8, which states, the institution shall employ student evaluation methods that measure the defined competencies. It was evident to the site visit team that the dental education program at the State University of Medicine and Pharmacy, Nicolae Testămătanu of the Republic of Moldova is designed to ensure that graduates are, at a minimum, competent in providing the identified types of oral health care within the scope of general dentistry. The course syllabi state that the institution employs student evaluation methods that demonstrate competency. Processes for the formative assessment of clinical performance are in place. However, supporting documentation to provide evidence that the graduates demonstrated competency or summative assessment were not made available to the site visit team. Recommendation. The site visit team recommends that the dental board grant provisional approval of the State University of Medicine and Pharmacy, Nicolae Testămătanu of the Republic of Moldova Faculty or School of Dentistry as authorized in California Code of Regulations, Section 1024.10, which states, provisional approval may be granted to an institution that is substantially in compliance with the requirements of this article, but that has specific deficiencies or weaknesses that are of such a nature that they can be corrected in a reasonable length of time. A provisional approval shall remain in effect for 24 months from the date on which it was issued, unless the deficiencies are removed sooner and full approval has been granted before that date. So, recommendation of the site visit is that within 24 months following the dental board's granting of provisional approval, the State University of Medicine and Pharmacy, Nicolae Testamentanu of the Republic of Moldova must submit documentation to support that their graduates have demonstrated competency in all types of oral health care to all types of patients, as identified in Institutional Standard C Substandard 6 and as required in Standard C Substandard 8 in order to be granted full approval. If anybody has any questions or comments, I'd be glad to do my best to answer them. Any order? We'll take Dr. Wu first.
First of all, thank you and the site team for going and doing this. I know it took a lot of time. But I would like you to explain what provisional approval really means. Does that mean that they are allowed to come and practice here? Does that mean, what does that mean, right now?
Again, as I read, and it was just a quote out of the regulations, that provisional approval is for 24 months. In that 24 months, the institution is required to submit to us, to the dental board, documentation of what we have identified as a weakness. Now, that provisional approval is for 24-month period. If they do not provide us with that documentation within that 24 months period, then the provisional approval is lost, okay? Now, when they do submit that and we approve it, then we will come back to the board and inform you that we have received that information or that documentation within the 24 months period, and that we will recommend again that we convert that provisional approval to full approval. Now, when full approval is granted to a international or a foreign dental school, that approval needs to be reviewed and reapproved in 7 years. It is up to the institution to apply for that renewal of approval. And if they do not, in that period of time, they will automatically lose their approval. Does that help you? No.
Kind of.
Now, from a legal standpoint, when the graduates will be eligible for licensure, that's a legal question that I would defer to Spencer.
So I guess it's a legal question that I'm asking. So does that mean that until we have a full approval, no graduates can come in because we're kind of at a standstill waiting for the rest of the application to, what is that? Okay.
That's not what that means.
Okay, so,
The school with the provisional approval is operating as though they were fully approved.
okay, that's what I wanted to know.
Yes.
Okay.
And so if they don't cure the defects within the 2-year period, then the board can rescind the approval very easily.
Okay,
Thank you.
that was it? Because I didn't have that answer, or I couldn't give it to you, because
I
if
know.
I gave it to you, it wouldn't be legally. He would have punched me out. Okay.
I know it's not my turn, but I have a follow-up to this question.
Okay.
If something happens where the board is given some information that gives them some cause for concern or pause, can they rescind this sooner than 24 months?
Absolutely. The board would handle it just like they would handle any other school that's been granted any type of approval.
Thank you.
Dr. Chan.
This has been kind of fascinating because the concept of having the board look at an equivalent of accreditation for a international school started some 15 to 16 years ago. So to have this come up. So the first question you've answered about the periodic reevaluation or equivalent of a re-accreditation period. Is that what happens in the United States for CODA?
Yes, it does, every 7 years.
Okay. The second question, though, that I don't know was clearly answered about from whether or not when they complete the curriculum, whether or not they are licensed to practice. Now, from my dim memory, it was the educational equivalent, and at that time, it allowed them to take the boards.
Right. Okay.
But this one has to be, it's different now.
Right, let me help you out with that.
Okay.
The approval of a foreign dental school as the approval of a domestic dental school, all that does is meets the requirement for the education for the license. They still have to do the same thing that graduates from the 6 dental schools in California have to do, and that is that they have to take the national board exams. They have to take a clinical licensing exam. All it's doing is saying that it is providing an education that is equivalent to that in the United States. But still, to get a license, they have to do everything else that you had to do and I had to do to get a license in California.
Thank you.
Right. The board is not in the business of accrediting. We are approving,
Right, correct.
not accrediting.
Correct.
Okay. Was there this? Dr. Witcher?
Yeah, that's helpful, and I was going to mention that. You know, I have a list of questions related to the detailed site visit and evaluation report, and I realized that I wasn't there and you were, and I don't want to bog down our meeting with a lot of extraneous detail, but I do have 8 questions.
Sure.
A couple of them are perhaps addressed by what you identified as areas that would, you know, need some remediation prior to granting full approval. You want me to go through?
Sure, go ahead
Is
and
that
bog
okay?
us down a little bit.
Okay. If you go to page 1 of the on-site inspection
You're
and
talking about the
evaluation
detailed report.
Yeah. The
Okay.
institutional standard A, institutional mission and goals.
Okay.
Under 2. It mentions measures of student achievement based on the institution's missions and goals. And what the report describes is the measurement of the institutional mission purposes and goals. And that's a little different. Maybe we're just talking semantics.
Okay.
But
But
it
again,
just appears the standards are more driven by outcomes in terms of what the students actually learn. And I wonder if that standard was actually met.
Yes, because the documentation that they presented to us was sufficient to identify that the institutional ongoing outcomes assessment program was measuring those components that were necessary to be measured to identify that their mission and goals were being met. As you see down later on, their goal is to align the processes with international standards. This is a goal, which is one of the reasons why they were asking us to come in and to evaluate their educational program, was to meet that goal. So our outcome of the site visit was an outcome measure for that goal, that they were meeting the standards internationally. So you had to look at detail of what their missions, goals, and measures were, and then see that the table that they provided to us with the data to support that this is a mission, this is a goal, this is what instrument we're using to measure accomplishment of that, and this is the result of that measurement. Now, most of their goals were in the process of being met to one degree or another. Obviously, when you're looking at how well your goals are being met, you're not going to find that all of your goals are 100% met, okay? And some of them are being met more than others. But at least there's a pattern there. They're showing that they do have a system, that they are measuring them, and that when their goals are not being met, they are implementing change and then remeasuring that to see if that change had an effect. So the site visit team was satisfied with the documentation that they presented to us, that this process was being done satisfactorily.
Okay. Next question, page 3, number 6, under Educational Standard C. And my question there is really kind of one of detail, and that is, were the competencies the same as those identified in that list? In other words, were the actual competencies which the students were, directed to complete?
Okay.
Was there consistency with those?
Okay. This is one of the areas that the site visit team has noted as a deficiency, and one of the reasons why the provisional approval was granted rather than full approval. This is one of the things we are asking for documentation to support, that in fact, this list of competencies, the students have been assessed to be competent in this list of treatments, all types of treatments identified, and all patient types, meaning children, adolescents, senior citizens, et cetera. That's what we're asking for documentation for. In our discussion with faculty and our discussion with students, yes, we're doing this. We looked at the forms that were being used in the summative assessment process. And hopefully you understand the difference between summative and formative assessment. But a formative assessment process is when you're the student, I'm the faculty member, and we sit down and work together to treat a patient. And the student asks me a question, and I direct them to do this or that. Yes, you need to take a little more tooth structure away here, et cetera, et cetera. That's a formative assessment process. We are forming that student's knowledge and skills. The summative assessment is when I back off as the faculty member. You as the student need to demonstrate to me on your own that you have the knowledge and the skills to provide that care in a clinically acceptable manner. I'm watching you, okay, to make sure that you don't abuse the patient or, do something of a drastic nature. But I'm not telling you what, if I have to step in and tell you that you're making a mistake, that ends right there. And now it becomes a formative assessment process. So what we're asking for is documentation of the summative assessment process, where the student demonstrated on their own that they were able to provide that treatment without supervision.
Yeah, and then a follow-up to that question is, the competencies, I believe, are set by the Ministry of Health.
No, competencies that we assessed are set by the Board of Dental Examiners. I think it was the Board of Dental Examiners when this was done, but the California Dental Board, these competencies were set 15 years ago, 12 years ago, when these regulations were written.
No, I mean the competencies identified by the school, for which I'm looking for
Competencies identified by the
consistency.
school, yes, are set by the Ministry of Health, but they
Yeah.
had to include these.
Right.
Now, that doesn't mean they didn't have competencies that weren't here, but it means that at a minimum, they had to have these.
Okay. I guess my question is, it wasn't really clear to me what the relationship between the school and the Ministry of Health was. For instance, there was a reference that they needed to do, they were seeking some curriculum changes.
Yes.
And I believe that they have been seeking those for a very long time.
Right.
And that it may be difficult for them to get
And
approval
again,
from the
that-
Ministry of Health.
That's a cultural thing that we had to get with by being there. And it is a holdover from the Russian-dominated system for years, where it was totally dominated by the bureaucrats. The educational institutions in all of the countries now that used to be under the communist bloc are struggling to get out from underneath that mentality, you might say, of lack of independence from an educational standpoint. And the university is working hard to modernize their curriculum to meet the current and international standards for dental education, because there's a holdover in their curriculum for courses that are required by the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Education that have to do with preparing these individuals for national disasters and et cetera, which I'm not saying is bad, but yet it's not part of dentistry, and it's not consistent with our concept of dental education. And the university is asking to get some relief from, because they only have so many hours out of the day and so many hours out of the academic year. And some of the comments that the students made were that the early years, which is not unusual for dental education, the early years are so loaded with heavy biomedical science courses and things like that, that they're struggling, you know, to keep up with it all. Our students here do the same thing, but they had a number of courses that were required for them to take and clinical rotations in areas of medicine that our dental students are not even exposed to. But again, this is a transition they're making from dentistry being a specialty of medicine rather than dentistry being a dentistry from beginning.
Yeah, I know
You know, the stomatology model.
They do rotations in obstetrics and gynecology or things like that.
I mean,
internal medicine, much more.
Is that bad? You know, I'm not saying it's bad, but it's sucking up curriculum hours that they would like to have more freedom to adjust as they see need rather than having the government dictate to them. But they are achieving that from an equivalency standpoint with us. Now, they have extended from originally, one of the ways that they compensated for that was their education was a 5-year program. It is now a 6-year program. So they added a year to their program in order to be able to gain those hours that they were wanting to devote more to specifically dental subjects rather than the medical subjects, which they still have to do. They can't get out from underneath that.
Yeah, I guess what I'm trying to get at is that their curriculum is so loaded with information. They're kind of teaching using a different approach, and I don't know this is necessarily bad, but they are trying to teach people everything they know rather than teaching them how to learn and how to do lifelong learning. And that's not necessarily an institutional standard, but it shows they're not quite there yet. Now, you were able to make an assessment as to where they are in relation to where they need to be, and I would accept that. But I'm just saying there are some things that are actually quite different. And
they are strong. They strongly encourage not only their faculty but their students in lifelong learning and continuing education. They fund international attendance of their faculty to European Union professional organization meetings. They've helped to fund their research. In order to advance from an assistant professor to an associate professor, you have to complete a PhD degree. So you cannot achieve a level higher than an assistant professor without accomplishing a PhD degree. Every student that graduates must do a research project, must do an original research project. They must write a thesis for that project, and they must do an oral defense of that project in order to graduate from dental school. I don't know of any dental school in California that requires that level of student involvement in research.
Yeah, that wasn't really a question because I thought the application covered that quite well. But the other question I had.
I'm giving you an example of their emphasis on, and again, on lifelong learning. They emphasize and support and require that their faculty and students are engaged in continuing education type processes. Which is lifelong learning.
Do they get a degree? It's not that you're approving, but you're not accrediting, so do they get a degree?
They get a degree, yes.
Yeah. And what's the degree?
They get a DDS degree.
Literally DDS?
Mm-hmm.
So, okay.
And their medical students get an MD degree. They have advanced training programs in 4 dental specialties and every medical specialty that is known in the area.
And continuing with my list. In reviewing the initial application, again, I didn't review the final, I wasn't there, and it's just a question. There was a long list of faculty. There wasn't anything but their degrees. There was no CV, there was no supporting information. I mean, again, we have different levels of faculty. You could have adjunct faculty, you could have instructors, people who would come in, be instructing in the schools. Maybe they wouldn't require the PhD to do that. I mean, did you feel in your review that the faculty qualifications were adequately described? Because that was
Yes.
really not in the information that we received.
Very much. The majority of their faculty were full-time rather than part-time. And it was required that faculty spend a minimum amount of time providing patient care themselves in their clinics. The country, the Republic, is just now opening up the concept of faculty members having a private practice in the community. And some of them are branching out into that venture now. That's more, Western style rather than, certainly Eastern European style. But the majority of the faculty are full-time. And as I said, to get to a level of an associate professor, you must have a PhD degree. And that's not just given. That takes a lot of work.
Okay, and then on page 6 under standard C10, which you describe as being met, bullet point 3 reads, the faculty and students agreed that the number of patients seeking dental treatment in the student clinics needs to be increased.
Mm-hmm.
I think dental schools in a lot of places are having trouble finding enough patients.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean,
No.
even though it's a goal and a recognition of a shortcoming, do you feel, I guess the finding of the site visit team was that there were an adequate number of patients for them to demonstrate competency?
Our assessment of the number of patients available and the number of clinical experiences that were provided were adequate. While the students are saying they would like more patients, they were getting sufficient number of patients to meet their requirements and to have sufficient clinical experiences to demonstrate competency. What we were lacking was the documentation that they demonstrated competency. I don't doubt, I'm not saying that they weren't competent. I'm saying I need the documentation to support that. And that was not readily available to us. And we had a limited amount of time there. A number of items that we asked for, documentation that we asked for on the spot, they were able to give it to us like that. Most all of their information is computerized. However, this would take some time for them to get. We did not share with them this report when we left. Okay, this was not our understanding of our mission. Our mission was report back here to the board, not to the school. So they are not aware at this point in time of this report.
Okay, and the other...
Now, it might be very easy for them to pull this out, and in a few days or a few weeks, we're going to have this documentation.
Yeah, we'll have the opportunity to see that. The other question I had is the relationship between the dental school and the parent university, and whether your assessment was that, there was adequate financial resources, and whether the school had control over its own budget.
The school has control over its own budget as much as any school here does. You tell me, does UCLA have control over its budget? No. It gets what it's told it gets, and it has to live with that. The university, the University of Medicine and Pharmacy is the only health sciences university in the country. It is owned and operated by the government. It gets its sole support from the government. It does have clinics, operates clinics where the patients pay for their services, and that is part of their operating capital and expenses. But the government and the university negotiate a budget on an annual basis. And the budget is obvious to meet their needs. So.
Okay, good. Finally, under institutional standard F, patient care services, the report was a little bit lacking in detail in this area for me to be completely comfortable with it. Are they using measurable assessment criteria related to comprehensive care as described in substandard A?
I'm sorry, tell me again what page you were on?
I'm sorry, 10.
On page 10,
Institutional
was it
standard F. 1A.
Standard F?
Yeah.
Uh,
Or maybe this ties back to 6 and 8 that
Right.
you said.
It does. Again,
additional.
comprehensive care means, and again, you have to look at the definition of what comprehensive care is. And comprehensive care is that the patient has a total examination, medical history, and intraoral and extraoral exam, all diseases identified, and a treatment plans or multiple treatment plans are developed. And then a decision is entered into between the patient, the student, and the supervising faculty as to what the definitive treatment plan will be. Now, it might be all of the treatment that's needed, it might be part of it, but that's comprehensive treatment. Okay, you're not just cherry picking and saying, I need a crown to do, so I'm going to do this crown, and all the rest of the teeth are falling apart.
Well, I think my question was more, are they using measurable assessment criteria to make that determination?
Yes.
I think what
They have-
is described in the report is they are doing it.
Right. They
It's
had
just, are they
rubrics.
doing it the right way?
They had rubrics that identified the
Okay.
criteria for assessment.
Right, and then just going down the list, it
And they were
wasn't
also
really-
requiring their students to self-assess
Right.
based on those same rubrics.
Yeah, I didn't see anything on mechanism to determine causes of treatment deficiencies.
Those were review where they had recall, and the patients came back on a recall basis, and to identify clinical effectiveness of the treatment provided, and the clinical status of that treatment over time, to identify deficiencies, and then they would be corrected.
Okay, and then on page 12, institutional standard I administration. They didn't have any kind of administrative manual. All they had was a flow chart. The entry really doesn't show how they met the standard other than through a flow chart, which seems, a little bit on the light side.
The site visit team was satisfied with their administrative structure through meetings with the administrators.
Okay.
Face-to-face meetings with the administrators.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Okay. Anybody else? Yes. Meredith? Okay.
Okay, I just want to actually go back to C6, make sure that I understand that one.
C6?
Working on it. Well, I mean, it's on 3 and 5, basically. So 5 is where it says it's not met. 3 is where it kind of describes what it is.
Okay.
So this is basically where it's saying that, they have to have competencies in the following areas. And so you say that that's not met. I mean, that's like the most concerning for me as far as from all the requirements is that the students show that they're competent in the area. And as you said, they might be, but if they haven't shown that, why do we feel comfortable with a provisional? I would think we need them to show that the students are competent in all of the dental areas before we would provide, before we would approve at all.
Okay, I'm not sure that I'm focusing on specifically what you're asking.
Okay, so page 5.
Okay.
Standard C6.
C6, okay?
You say is not met. That standard is the standard that basically says the educational program shall be designed to ensure that graduates are at a minimum competent in providing all of the following types of oral health care within the scope of general dentistry. And then, of course, it lists a whole bunch of them. And so you're saying that this requirement is not met. So this requirement is that they're minimally competent in a list of things?
No, what it's saying is that it is identified as not met by the site visit team because we were not provided evidence to support that it was met.
I
we're
realize that. That's my concern,
and
is that
that's
you
what
don't have
we're-
evidence that supports this, but
and
this to
that's-
me is the most critical
Okay, and
of
that's
all
what-
the requirements.
And that's what we're asking for, and that's why they're getting provisional approval.
This shows core competency. I guess I'm just really uncomfortable giving any kind of approval if they haven't shown competency in the performance of the basic duties. I mean, so to what we said earlier, they could be, but we don't know that they are. And during this 2-year period, students who come out who may or may not be competent in these areas, because we don't know, could get licensed. Okay, just
hear
making
what
sure
you're
we're all
saying.
on the same page then.
And again, the site visit team was satisfied by observing clinical patient care, by discussing with faculty and with students and with staff and with patients that they were being provided good quality care. To be able to document that it was assessed as competency, meaning independently delivered without faculty supervision, was the not met part of it. So therefore, we didn't feel comfortable in saying that you have met this, that's why it's provisional.
Okay, right. I guess, once again, my point still, though, is that these could become licensed dentists who will be performing on their own, not with a faculty member. That's just my entire point.
Well, but conceivably, yes. But if they haven't gotten the training, they will not be able to pass the national board in the United States. They will not be able to pass REB. So, I mean, essentially the door has been opened. If they can't pass those two requirements, then they don't get licensed.
I mean, you're right. I get that there's another barrier. It still just doesn't, like, to me, this doesn't seem, I realize we can give a provisional if it's substantially in compliance. This just happens to be, I think, one of the most important ones, and for that one to be the one that's not met just makes me uncomfortable. I mean, everyone else could be comfortable. It makes me uncomfortable.
I understand. Obviously, the site visit team had access to information, knowledge, and so forth that isn't on a piece of paper. And it was the site visits team consensus that we were comfortable, but we needed proof. We needed evidence to support.
I mean, I guess I agree that, of course, we need evidence to support it.
And that was an area that we felt needed to be documented more satisfactory to us. We asked if we could get that before we left. We were there for obviously a short period of time, and we were not able to obtain it. And again, upon our exit interview with them, we did not share with them the results of our visit. Okay? Any other? I think, yes, Kathy.
So I just wanted to understand about the provisional part. If, say, a student starts next year there is a chance they will come out not being able to participate in the United States if the provisional doesn't go through.
That's
right?
correct. Because they're
taking a risk.
Their curricular program is 6 years now. So if a student starts now, they will not graduate for 6 years. Provisional approval will be removed in 2 years if the documentation that we have requested, that we are required, is not received or does not meet our satisfaction.
And so they're taking that risk, but the expectation is they will meet all the requirements in
Right.
6 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to tell you that we had a meeting with the students, an open meeting announced to all of the students that we had a meeting room, and any student that wanted to meet with us were invited and welcome to come. And we had a room full of students. They all spoke English well. I asked them how many of them were from a country other than Moldova, and there were maybe 20 out of 60. What did you say about that, Zach? Numbers that were foreign students, not Moldovan citizens. Well, because they were living in Moldova now, but one of them was from the United States. Only one student was from the United States. He was from Corona in Southern California, and he was planning on coming back to the United States to get a license and practice dentistry. And he went to Moldova for a number of reasons, but one of which was the difference in expense of the tuition and the cost to go to school there. But we also asked how many of you want to come to the United States after you've completed your training here and practice and get a license to practice dentistry in California, because we made it clear to them that this approval was only good for California, and only the one student from Corona raised his hand. So it's not to me to judge why the university is wanting to go through this process. That's their business, but it doesn't appear that, at the present time anyway, that there are a lot of students going to school there that are wanting to come to California.
Mr. President? Yes. Just to help focus, now that we've gone through some questions on any public comment or further discussion, I'm going to move that we accept the site visit team recommendation and approve make the approval of the provisional approval.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Now, we can enter into some more discussion as far as the board is concerned regarding the motion. Yes?
Just this is more of clarification for me. So with this provisional approval, does it apply to all the graduates that are in matriculation at this time? So let's say the students in the very last year at the school can apply for licensure in California.
That's a legal decision that I would defer.
That's correct, they can.
Okay, all right. So it doesn't apply to those that are just coming in and not, as a freshman. It's actually applying, it will apply to all the students that are in matriculation at this time. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other question or comments?
Yeah, just an operational question. To maybe allay some of Mackenzie's concerns. Is there anything wrong with holding off on granting provisional approval? I think the code calls for us to send them a letter within 90 days indicating what the deficiencies are, giving the opportunity to correct them, and then we're kind of back on track after that rather than giving just straight provisional right off the bat. They might meet conditions for full approval if they come back with everything.
The decision on the site visit team's choice of the choices that we had was to choose a provisional approval because, number one, it identifies that the standards are primarily met with deficiencies that were easily correctable within a short period of time. That was the definition of provisional approval. And it was the opinion of the site visit team that these were not major deficiencies that were definitely affecting the quality of the education. It was a matter of supporting documentation that would be readily available, should be readily available within a 2-year period. That's why the provisional choice was made. We could deny approval. We could have, if they had major deficiencies, I believe one of our choices was that we would identify those major deficiencies. They would need to supply those. We would go through continue the approval process. The other one was a provisional approval. So we chose a provisional approval to recommend. Now, that's a recommendation to the board. It's up to you as to what you decide to do with this. That was our recommendation.
Well, we have a motion on the floor. We should probably vote on that and see where that goes.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from the board? Okay, we'll open it up for public comment. Any members of the public would like to step up to the table and make a comment or ask any questions?
Dr. Guy Atchison, California Academy of General Dentistry. So if they have provisional approval, then any student that graduates underneath the provisional approval will have been deemed to have met the educational requirements for applying for a license in California, correct?
I understand from our legal counsel that that's correct.
Okay. And if that provisional approval were to be rescinded before that student who graduated under the provisional approval completed a California license, they still would deem to have completed the educational requirements for a license, as long as they graduate within that window of provisional approval. If the school loses their approval, they don't lose their qualification for educational requirements.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members. First, let me begin by acknowledging and thanking the Site Committee for a very thorough job. I also want to take the opportunity to give thanks to the Initial Review Committee. The concern with regards to the two issues that have been raised are concerns. The university is prepared to address those. The rationale and the law before us allows for a provisional to be granted, provided that the within that 2-year period of time, the corrections are made. Be assured, as I sit here, that the university faculty, the dean, are eager to begin to address these particular points. The provisional has been granted in the past to the previous universities, and so we would ask that you support the recommendation. This is a university that in some areas has a much higher standard, as expressed by the chairman with regards to faculty and associate professors. It's an opportunity here that you have before you based on the testament and the expertise of a very highly qualified group of individuals that went. Again, on behalf of the university, we want to thank you for the leadership. We want to thank the team for the participation, and we would ask that you support the recommendation before you.
By the way, this is Senator Polanco.
I apologize.
For those of you that don't know.
I apologize. I'm a former state senator. I served 16 years in the legislature, and I was very much involved with the original legislation. Those of you who have seen me here in the past, it is a piece of legislation that has not been utilized as some may have hoped, but it's here before us today, and we would ask that we be given the opportunity to address these 2 points, and I can assure you that they will be addressed to the satisfaction and to meet the standard of this board. And if not, then it was all for naught. It has not cost the state of California a penny. This is all on the university dime, if you will, and so I would ask that you support the recommendation of the Site Committee.
Senator Polanco.
Yes.
Meet President Morrow.
That's okay. That's okay. I can be
Chairman, it's an old tradition of committees. Mr. President, thank you so much and congratulations to your new role and also to the other officers that have been now duly elected. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Brianna Pittman with CDA. Just a quick clarifying question. You had mentioned that if students who finish within this 2-year provisional time period attempt to get a license and then are not able to, will there be some way of tracking that or using that as part of the decision to see, to deciding if the school will receive full approval, or will there be any kind of monitoring of the folks who are actually coming out of this if they do actually complete and fulfill and get a license in California?
I'll leave that up to our executive officer at this point.
Yes.
Yeah, the long answer is yes. Any other comments or questions? Okay. With that said, we'll call the question and read the vote. Read the roll. I'm sorry.
Stephen Morrow?
Yes.
Judith Forsythe?
Yes.
Steve Afrigat, aye. Fran Burton?
Aye.
Stephen Chan?
Aye.
Yvette Chappelle Ingram?
Yes.
Katie Dawson?
Yes.
Kathleen King?
Yes.
Ross Lai?
Yes.
Huang Lei?
Abstain.
Meredith McKenzie?
No.
Thomas Stewart?
Yes.
Bruce Witcher,
No.
Deborah Wu.
No.
Mr. President, you have 10 ayes, 3 noes, and 1 abstention. The motion carries.
Thank you. Moving on, where are we? Agenda item number 17, are we on? 17, initiation of standards for, international standards for rulemaking. Okay, Lucy?
Lucy Sarkisian, Legislative and Regulatory Analyst for the Dental Board. For Agenda Item 17, during the August 2016 meeting, the Dental Board of California, we voted to include updating the institutional standards found in the California Code of Regulations, Section 1024.1, as part of the regulatory rulemaking priorities for the fiscal year 2016-2017. The California, Section 1024.1, it was adopted and implemented in accordance with the CODA educational standards available during that time. And Section 1024.1 of the CCNR was last amended within our regulations in 2001. And so since 2001, the CODA educational standards have been amended at least 10 times. And those amendments are not reflected in the Dental Practice Act. Recently, CODA standards were again revised, and as a result, the board or staff is seeking to amend Section 1024.1 in order to maintain equivalency and consistency throughout all dental schools recognized in California. At this time, if you look at the attached language, the existing language has been deleted, and the statement that says all dental schools seeking board approval shall have institutional standards that are equivalent to the accreditation standards for dental education programs published by the Commission on Dental Accreditation, which is hereby incorporated by reference, which is also attached to this document. And so at this point, staff has been working with board legal counsel in order to draft the regulatory language, which is in front of you today, and staff is hoping that the board will consider and approve the proposed regulatory language relative to the institutional standards and direct staff to take all necessary steps to initiate the formal rulemaking process, including the proposed language, including noticing the proposed language for 45-day public comment, setting the proposed language for a public hearing, and authorizing the executive officer to make any non-substantive changes to the rulemaking package. If after the close of the 45-day public comment period and public regulatory hearing, no adverse comments are received, authorize the executive officer to make any non-substantive changes to the proposed regulations before completing the rulemaking process, and adopt the proposed amendments to the California Code of Regulations, Title 16, Section 24.1, as noticed in the proposed text.
I'd like to move this.
Do you have a motion?
Yes.
Okay, it's been moved to accept the recommendation. Yes.
Sorry, I have another question.
Is this a second?
This is a very, we've had a second, okay.
Okay.
Are we okay? Yeah, this is an interesting area, and I know this came up in discussion on the anesthesia standards out of the ADA, because some of the states have adopted those. And the question is, if those change, the state then need to do a rulemaking to update them if they're incorporated by reference.
Yes.
And we're sort of doing the same thing here. So if these are changed and updated, do we need to do another rulemaking to recognize that, or is this just?
It'll depend upon what institutional standards were changed.
Okay.
Yeah, so you guys will have to, the board will have to take a look at those standards and make a determination as to whether or not it would be necessary to have this section reflect a version that's in the future. So let's say they change standards in 2018, again, the board will take a look at those standards, and they're not significant enough, just remain with the 2016 standards.
So in follow-up, so are we okay striking all this?
That's outdated anyway.
Okay, but do we have the institutional standards somewhere else, so we have something to refer to if we need to
They're
make a change?
incorporated by reference.
Correct.
Yeah. they're in
So the
they're-
attached document, in addition to the language, if you look at the document that says, after page 6, the Commission on Dental Accreditation and Accreditation Standards for Dental Education Programs, all of that is the institutional standards.
So I think Dr. Witcher knows that. I think he's maybe asking why we didn't use the same format to essentially incorporate that language word for word into, and we might be able to say that actually the recommendations in such a case are to recommend, to keep it short and recommend by reference.
Okay. Fine, that's my question.
You know, my question, a question I have, Spencer, would be, is there any way that we can write it so that our standards will change as CODA changes theirs automatically without going back through the process?
No.
Okay, that's
OIO
a
won't
quick
accept that.
answer. That's a quick answer. A little explanation for, I think, is in order for some of us, I think, and that is, originally, the institutional standards that are in regulations at the present time were basically a copy of the CODA standards at that time. One of our problems has been that during that time, we have not updated them as CODA has updated them. So we've gotten way out of date now, okay? So also, when this legislation was written that mandated that the Dental Board of California process applications from any foreign school, dental school that wanted to apply, we had a statutory requirement to process that application and go through the process. At that time, that was the only way that the dental board could facilitate that happening, because the Commission on Dental Accreditation at that time did not have an international dental school approval process. Since then, Commission on Dental Accreditation has developed and implemented an international accreditation process. However, and we investigated the possibility of them, of us, and we have a code that says that we can contract, the board can contract with an organization, accrediting body, and so forth, to do that for us and report back to us the results. However, the Commission on Dental Accreditation would only do that assessment on the basis of their current standards, not our standards. So therefore, we had no choice at this point except to go ahead and proceed with the site visit and the approval of this university's School of Dentistry based on our code and our statutes. What we're wanting to do now is, and we're asking to do, is to do what we should have done some time ago, and that is to bring our standards up to what CODAs are. If we are to be approving foreign dental schools on an equivalency of U.S. education, we need the same yardstick. We need the same measuring tool to measure that equivalency. It's difficult for us, and it was difficult for us as educators in the United States and in California to have to be bound by educational standards that are 15 years old. But we had no choice. And so we had to do the best we could. So there was some of our struggles from educators of multiple years' experience in California dealing with standards that were so outdated. We did the best we could to assess this educational process as best we could to be equivalent with what we're doing now, but we couldn't measure them by our standards. Okay, so you can see the frustration we had. So what we're trying to do is bring this process up so that in the future, we have the option of contracting with CODA to do the assessment, and the institution would work through CODA, and CODA would give us the report, and then we would make our decision. So that's the process. Okay.
Fran?
Any other comments or questions? Fran?
So, based on everything that you just said, the question for council is, rather than to refer to 2016, could the language say current standards, current code of standards, and not the specific reference to a year?
No, the Administrative Procedure Act requires a document to be incorporated by reference rather than refer to something that exists somewhere else.
Okay.
So then we need to be monitoring, we meaning the board, need to be monitoring CODA's changes in standards so that we can judge, has that change been critical to the point of needing to go back in and redo the process, or is it not critical? If you look at the first page after, second page after the cover page for the standards, it's listing the date and the item that the change was and the action that was taken. And one of them on August 10 of 2012 was revised the mission statement of CODA. Okay, is that something we need to go back in and change our standards for? No, it was CODA changed their mission standard. And that doesn't really affect the quality of the education, or we need to make that decision. Has this change substantively affected the educational process, so we need to go back in and update them, or do we say that's okay? But again, we need to be cognizant of the fact that if we are going to contract with CODA to do this process, we need to make sure that our standards are acceptable to CODA for their process. Otherwise, they'll say, no, we can't provide that service for you because we have to do it by our standards, not your standards. Any other comments or questions? Do we open it up to the public? Do we have any comments from the members of the public in attendance? Okay, I believe we have a motion.
Stephen Morrow.
Yes.
Judith Forsythe.
Yes.
Stephen Afriette, aye. Fran Burton.
Aye.
Stephen Chant. Aye. Yvette Chappelle Ingram.
Yes.
Katie Dawson.
Yes.
Kathleen King.
Yes.
Ross Lai.
Yes.
Huang Lei.
Yes.
Meredith McKenzie.
Yes.
Thomas Stewart.
Yes.
Bruce Witcher.
Yes.
Deborah Wu.
Yes.
Mr. President, 14 ayes, the motion is adopted.
Thank you very much. Just to mention, it's 1 o'clock. I think we have not very much longer to go. Rather than take a break for lunch, would you prefer to just plow through and get it over with?
Yes.
And get out of here quicker? I see a bunch of nodding. Okay, so haven't seen as much as that since I had one on my dashboard. You know, the bobblehead. You know? Okay, so we're going now to agenda item number 18. I think that's the Prescription Drug Abuse Committee's report.
Thank you, President Morrow.
I'll take chairman. He's gone now, so.
The Prescription Drug Abuse Committee met this morning. Quorum was established, and the group voted to support the subcommittee's recommendation to the full board to approve the recommendation to establish a communication plan relating to opioid abuse and misuse, which initially includes a webpage dedicated to prescription drug resources, and to recommend the board approve the posting of these resource links to its website beginning January 1, 2017. And I respectfully ask the board to approve that motion.
Mr. President, I move that we accept committee recommendation and approve the action.
Okay, it's been moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have multiple seconds. Who was first? Who was first and who was second? Okay.
I didn't say anything. It would have gone for me. You can write my name if you want to.
Yeah, we're getting punched.
Was it Meredith?
Either Wu or Han.
Was Yvette or?
Was it? I think,
Credit for it, though.
okay.
Thank you.
We're getting, okay, it's been moved and seconded. Okay. Any additional comments from board members or questions?
Just a
Yes.
clarification. So you're going to, Tom?
Yes, ma'am.
So you're going to establish, you're going to establish a communication plan. And what is it you're gonna do by January 1?
Start to collect that information and take it onto our website. All of that.
But that's not gonna happen, it's not gonna be on the website on January.
No,
1,
ma'am,
right?
no,
Okay,
it's not, no,
okay.
no. We have plenty of work to do.
Okay, I didn't understand that part. Thank you.
I'm going to start doing it on January 1st, after New Year's. Right. Okay, any other comments or questions? Members of the public in attendance, any comments or questions regarding this agenda item? Okay, that's it, let's take the vote.
Stephen Morrow.
Yes.
Judith Forsythe.
Yes.
Stephen Afrigat, aye. Fran Burton.
Aye.
Stephen Chan.
Aye.
Yvette Chappelle Ingram.
Yes.
Katie Dawson.
Aye.
Kathleen King.
Aye.
Ross Lai.
Yes.
Fong Lei.
Aye.
Meredith McKenzie.
Yes.
Thomas Stewart.
Yes.
Bruce Witcher.
Yes.
Deborah Wu.
Yes.
Mr. President, 14 ayes, the motion carries.
Thank you very much. We lost Karen. Oh, she's hiding back there. Okay. All right, moving on to item number 19, appointment of a dental assisting council member. Judy's taking it, okay?
Okay, so the RDAEF seat has been vacant since March this year. We have a lot of RDAEF agenda items coming up, so I'd like to make a recommendation today. Staff's been advertising this position. We have received 6 applicants, 2 of which were not eligible due to the requirement that they need to be an RDA for the past 5 years, or prior 5 years. So 2 were ineligible, which left us with 4. Kathleen Aranda, Teresa Lua, Lena Padilla, and Jennifer Rodriguez. I personally interviewed each one of the applicants, and after much consideration, I would like to recommend Jennifer Rodriguez for the seat of the RDAEF Dental Assisting Council.
If I could add a comment, I also went over the applications, and Judy and I have done this in the past, and I concur with that recommendation.
Judy, are you making that as a motion or just a recommendation?
I'd make that as a motion.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded?
Seconded, yes.
To accept, what was the name again?
Jennifer Rodriguez.
Jennifer Rodriguez for the DAC position. Any further discussion? Members of the public, any comments or questions? Okay, Mr. Secretary, do your job.
Stephen Morrow.
Yes.
Judith Forsythe.
Yes.
Stephen Afrigat, aye. Fran Burton.
Aye.
Stephen Chan.
Aye.
Yvette Chappelle Ingram.
Yes.
Katie Dawson.
Aye.
Kathleen King. Ross Lai.
Yes.
Fong Lei.
Yes.
Meredith McKenzie.
Yes.
Thomas Stewart.
Yes.
Bruce Witcher.
Yes.
Deborah Wu.
Yes.
Mr. President, 13 ayes, the motion carries.
Thank you very much. Okay, we turn the next item, number 20, over to our legal counsel, election of officers, board officers for 2017.
Can we have a bio break? Or
Sure, you want to take a
physiological
quick?
break.
Pardon?
you don't think that this is gonna? No? Okay.
I have to leave in 20 minutes for a flight.
We can still maintain a quorum, can't
Okay, I'll be right back. Go on.
we? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, just keep going.
It should be pretty
Did you
quick.
intend on nominating someone?
No.
Okay.
Okay. It's a quickie.
This should be good.
Okay, open it up for nominations for president.
It would be my privilege and pleasure to nominate Dr. Bruce Witcher for president of the board.
Dr.
Second.
It doesn't need a second. Dr. Witcher, do you accept that nomination? Are there any additional nominations for president?
Is it appropriate to make a comment?
Sure, you can make a comment. Scared him.
About that one. Depends on what the comment is.
I have shared with Dr. Witcher my deep concern about his involvement in the subcommittee. And even if the subcommittee is suspended, any feeling of conflict of interest on behalf of members of the public who have been so involved in this anesthesia process, or any of our parties that we deal with. I feel very strongly that this issue is not going to end on January 1 when we submit our report. And that we need to kind of make sure that there is no thinking on anyone's part that we may be biased or we may be conflicted in some way. And I've also shared with him that for that reason, I would not be able to support him because of my strong feeling.
Spencer, I know we don't normally discuss nominees.
But you can.
I appreciate that. I just think that professional boards are inherently having appearances of conflicts because we all interact with the industry of which we are involved and regulate. And in all the boards I've served locally and statewide, there's very few people I can count among those with the kind of integrity that Dr. Witcher has, and I'm proud to support him today.
Thank you.
Could I respond? Okay, I won't. It's not necessary.
Hearing no more nominations for president.
I move nominations be closed.
Can you do that?
There's no reason to close it because there were no additional nominations.
So,
I withdraw the motion.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Secretary, you can call the question.
Oh, I thought you were doing that. We're electing secretaries soon, aren't we? Stephen Morrow,
Yes.
Judith Forsythe,
Yes.
Steve Afriette votes aye. Fran Burden,
No.
Stephen Chan,
Yes.
Yvette Chappelle Ingram,
Yes.
Katie Dawson,
Yes.
Kathleen King,
Yes.
Ross Lai,
Yes.
Huang Lei,
Yes.
Meredith McKenzie,
yes.
Thomas Stewart,
Yes.
Bruce Witcher,
Yes.
Deborah Wu.
Yes.
It's 13 ayes, 1 no. Dr. Witcher is elected.
Congratulations, Dr. Wicker.
And thank you for your confidence. It's a great honor, and I'm counting on you to keep me out of trouble.
I think it's a good sign you clapped for yourself. You
I
actually
clapped for
wanted
you.
it. You clapped, but I didn't get it. Thank you.
Yes, you have good self-esteem. We like that.
Nominations are now open for vice president of the board. Any nominations?
I'd like to nominate Dr. Tom Stewart.
Dr. Stewart, do you accept that nomination?
I do.
Thank you. Are there any additional nominations for vice president? Hearing none. Mr. Secretary, call question.
Stephen Morrow,
Yes.
Judith Forsythe,
Yes.
Steve Afriette votes aye. Fran Burton,
Yes.
Stephen Chan,
Yes.
Yvette Chappelle Ingram,
Yes.
Katie Dawson,
Yes.
Kathleen King,
Yes.
Ross Lai,
Yes.
Huang Lei,
Yes.
Meredith McKenzie,
Yes.
Thomas Stewart.
Can I vote twice? Yes, I mean yes.
I'm looking at this, you don't need to.
We'll have to have a recount.
Bruce Witcher,
Yes.
Deborah Wu.
Yes.
Mr. President, Dr. Stewart's elected on a 14-0 vote.
Congratulations. Nominations are now open for Secretary of the Board.
Yeah, I'd like to nominate Dr. Deborah Wu.
Dr. Wu, do you accept that nomination?
Yes, I do.
Are there any additional nominations for Secretary of the Board? Hearing none. Mr. Secretary, call the question.
It's the last time. Stephen Morrow,
Yes.
Judith Forsythe,
Yes.
Steve Afriat votes aye. Fran Burton,
Yes.
Stephen Chan,
Aye.
Yvette Chappelle Ingram,
Yes.
Katie Dawson, Kathleen King,
Yes.
Ross Lai, Huang Lei,
Yes.
Meredith McKenzie,
Yes.
Thomas Stewart,
Yes.
Bruce Witcher,
Yes.
and Deborah Wu.
Yes.
Mr. President, 14 ayes, Deborah Wu is elected.
Congratulations.
Oh, okay. Item number 21, public comments on items that are not on the agenda. This is an opportunity for members of the public to make comments to the board. These comments cannot be discussed by the board except a discussion for whether to place an item on a future agenda for discussion. Okay, so any members of the public that are wanting to make a comment, please step up to the speaker's table.
Good afternoon, Dr. Morrow,
Good afternoon.
Karen, and California Board. My name is Dr. Dale Chamberlain from Helena, Montana. Currently on the Board of Dentistry for the state of Montana. I was past president in my first 5 years, and I'm in my second 5 years. Also, I'm president-elect of REB, and it's a pleasure to be here and to address each one of you. I'd like you to know that the issues that with which you are dealing are the same issues that we are dealing with in Montana, and we have a board meeting next week, and we will be addressing some of those same issues as well. In light of this being a long two-day session and some of us need to leave, what I'd like to do is to submit this written report to Karen or to Dr. Morrow or to the fine president-elect and just make it part of the record, and I won't take the 2 or 3 minutes that I was going to speak so everybody can be on their way, if that's agreeable with you.
I think it's agreeable to most of us, if not all of us.
We promised to read it.
It's not that long, trust me, but I'll try to make sure that I'm on your agenda. Next time I'll have Beth Cole, who's the president of REB, make sure that she gets a hold of Karen and puts me onto the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming, we appreciate it. Okay, item number 22, I'm sorry, we got another one. Sorry, you snuck up on me there.
Good afternoon. My name is Malia Brooks. I am the current president of KDAT. And we'd just like to say thank you so much for having I've got my notes here, having the DAC meeting concurrent with the dental board meeting. One thing that we ask is that all matters with dental assisting, the RDAEF, be all together so that the dental assistants that were here yesterday could have participated in the knowing about the election for the RDAEF. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Guy Atchison, California Academy of General Dentistry. I missed all the fun yesterday regarding general anesthesia. I couldn't even get sound on the live webcast. But I wanted to say thank you for doing such a comprehensive job, getting all the opinions from all the diverse stakeholders involved in pediatric general anesthesia, and for Gail, Matthew, and CDA for doing the yeoman's work of really encouraging and gathering all the diverse elements, whether it's general dentistry, dental anesthesiologists, medical anesthesiologists, oral surgeons, periodontists. It was a wonderful process that I honor being part of, And your report is just going to be a very high-quality product because of that. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Atchison.
Dr. Atchison, I have a question. What part of the webcast, you never got sound on the webcast, or did it go out at a certain time?
Well, I spoke to the videographer about this, and I assessed it both on on two different systems in the hospital that I was working at yesterday, doing general anesthesia. And I could get the video. I went through the dental board's website and clicked to get to the live webcast, and I didn't get sound. And then when I finally got to my office, and you guys were still here at 4 o'clock, I got video and no sound. So I don't understand that, but that was just my experience. And he has independent confirmation that sound was available to many other people.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments from the public? Okay. Now it's board members' chance to make any comments that you would like that are not on the agenda. Again, these are comments that you are free to make. However, we can only discuss them on the basis of whether to put them on a future agenda for discussion. Yes, Kathleen.
So I don't think this was on the agenda, but I missed a little bit this morning. I want to thank the board, the officers for this year, because one, I didn't have to do it, and two, it does take time, and I appreciate all the time you put into it and all the time the people on the committees put into this effort. I was joking that I didn't have to, but it was I thought, very professional effort this year, and I really want to thank everyone.
Thank you very much. Any other comments?
And happy holidays.
Okay. Any other comments?
Just a quick thank you to Karen and Sarah and the rest of our staff. They were down the very person that helps put on these board meetings, and as always, we sit here and it's seamless for us, and I know they do incredible work, and I wanted to say thank you.
Anybody else? Well, obviously, I have a lot to say, but I will start crying if I try to say most of it, so.
Let's see it.
That's kind of.
Maybe it would go well with a nice haircut.
You know, sometimes my wife doesn't want to go to the movie theaters with me because I cry, and she gets embarrassed. But anyway, you know, it has. You know, I've been a member of this board now for what, 6 years, 7 years. I'm extremely impressed with the degree of commitment that I think all of you have individually and collectively as a group to meet our required mandated protection of the public as our primary goal. We are different people. We have different opinions. We come from different backgrounds, but we all have a common goal. And I admire that, and I'm pleased to be a member of this organization. And I certainly appreciate your willingness to, and I'm starting to do it, okay? Your willingness to trust me to be your president for this past year. And I'm looking forward to the rest of my time with you and all of you, and looking forward to getting to know Dr. Chan better and working with you. I've heard a lot about you, and it's all been good, so you can relax, okay? But I want to thank you all, and I appreciate your cooperative effort to work together and to accomplish the things that we need to accomplish. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. So I get to do this one more time. We are adjourned. Yay!